pretty sure. I know we're going to be taking it away from that specific.
Yeah.
That's just the starting.
Yeah, it was. They settled out of court $95 million in a class action suit where Apple admitted no wrongdoing.
Yeah, we have to start over again because.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
because we were halfway through.
Okay. So anyway, we were.
Hey, let me just.
Oh, I'll let you do it.
Hey, everybody! Episode 45, Radio Free Ortona. We're getting there. Anyway, today, I don't know, we're talking about Apple and a lawsuit and behavior of capitalists and capitalism and stuff like that, I think. So, since none of you are going to listen to this anyway, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Take it away, Paddy.
You don't care.
All right. So, Apple settled a lawsuit out of court on a class action suit. I believe it was in a court in California for $95 million. Which is going to amount to approximately $20 per device that they have sold since 2014 over what Apple says was the accidental recording by Siri of unintended conversations or unintended data.
Right.
Apple admits no wrongdoing in this suit.
How many people were in the class? Do you know?
I do not.
Oh, okay.
But it was it was representative of everybody. Who has Apple device.
Yeah, given the saturation of Apple devices in the marketplace, it's like a lot of people are I'm sure, eligible to be in the class.
It's basically going to be $20 per device.
Yeah.
If you bought an Apple device which holds this technology, which is basically anything since 2014 onwards, then you can apply and say, hey, I fit into this category, and you'll get $20.
$95 million.
That's about it. And it's only Americans.
Yeah, of course.
So, for the benefit of anyone who is actually listening.
Well, that's probably less, I think more American, $20 per device, but I'm like, I bet 100 more, because there's 340 million people. I bet 100 million of them use Apple devices.
Right, but how many are actually going to fill out the form?
That's true. So definitely settled by the lawyers, right? Who are taking their 30 points off the top, and they're like, well, that's a cool, 28 million or whatever for us. And
there was ARS Technica had a pretty good article about it, and they were basically saying one of the reasons why they settled out of court, why the plaintiffs settled, was if they actually pushed this to a full court decision, then Apple's lawyers could say, okay, we want anybody, like for example, the amount of money that could be on the table is in the billions.
Yep.
Then Apple's lawyers could say, okay, we'll give compensation, but everybody who wants compensation must prove that their data was recorded.
Right.
And that puts a very high evidentiary standard, which is really going to cut into.
But then Apple's got to provide that data.
No, Apple would provide
that would
data.
be my counterpoint. Yeah,
but it's going to take a lot more effort on behalf of the individual users.
Yeah, and it's a lot more labor for the legal team.
It's a lot more labor. The other thing is they were very concerned about what kind of legal precedent that could set. They really don't know where that kind of law could lead to. Mm-hmm. And both lawyers on both sides of the aisle were saying, maybe we should let the legislatures catch up on this one.
Probably.
That this could open a whole Pandora's box of legal precedent that they really didn't know where it could go.
Well, I think you just hit the nail on the head. Because for me, this is not about Apple. It's not about Siri. It's the way this conversation came about is a text exchange that occurred a couple of days ago.
One or two.
When the gentleman across the table from me...
Where? Steve?
One of you brought it up.
He said gentleman.
Oh.
I'm not a gentleman.
I'm not gentleman. Usually much harsher language.
I use this term very loosely.
Right.
So one of you brought up the fact that this had occurred, and the other one of you commented that, man, they could have paid a whole lot more on this.
Yeah, well, Paddy brought it up, and I said, it seemed like they got off cheap.
They did.
Because if it had been
really,
if it had been in like an antitrust lawsuit filed by the federal government, and the federal government won, the fine would have been billions.
Yes, and ARS mentioned that as well.
Yeah.
That had they been found guilty in criminal proceedings for illegal wiretapping, then yes, they would have been in the billions.
Yeah.
So, of course, my facetious response to all this was, well, isn't this just free market capitalism at work?
Right. Which is actually something I hope we can get into.
Well, that's my whole intent to this conversation because, and I was rather fascinated by your response. And
was it coherent? Because the first 3 texts I sent didn't go through. I sent 4 texts, and the 4th ended up as the first.
But that was after I had asked and you responded to.
Yeah, and my response got blah, 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 discombobulated.
Prior to that,
okay.
I had said, wasn't this just free market capitalism at work? And your response was, Trent, are you condoning the breaking of laws?
Well, it was...
Right? And
I didn't say that. I said that you seem to conflate breaking the law with free market capitalism.
No, that's not what you said. In fact, I'm going to go get my...
Okay.
I'm going to go get my phone. I'll be right back.
Okay,
folks.
let's pause.
No, you guys carry on.
Pause.
Okay, we're back.
Okay,
Discuss
so
voting.
I guess I stand corrected. I do stand corrected. Not sure what the issue here is.
You want to know what it is, Trent?
Just free market capitalism at work? No. And your response was, you seem to equate the free market with breaking the law. Why is that?
You want to know what this is, Trent? Aluminum mess tins catching up.
Yeah.
All of those... I told you.
But they were supercharged by the bacteria trapped in the cut lines of your Melmac plate.
Yes. And okay, I appreciate that they screwed up the water resup and you were dying of dehydration. But when you drink the water out of the pressure cooker, buddy, there's no joy that comes out of that. No joy. You should have licked the tree leaves like the rest of us.
You're talking to the guy who was in charge of the water resup. Well, 2 of us, actually.
Anyway, go on.
Okay, but I mean, this is it for me because we spend a lot of time, and I hear from you guys, the free market capitalism governs itself, it regulates itself, and the people, the consumer base will be out there, helping them govern by saying, "Oh, we find this intolerable, and therefore we're not going to buy your product." Right, and I call bullshit.
Okay.
Because now I'm not saying all free market capitalism. I said,
but we're talking about, say, this case.
Ideally, I agree with you.
Yeah.
That free market capitalism, if it was acting under moral constraints, would be a great thing.
Define moral constraints.
Well, we're talking about one here, right?
Okay.
Now,
who determines the moral constraints?
That's why I said, this is a fascinating topic because this is only a starting point, right? This is what the 3 of us keep going on about, right? So on the one hand, because I believe one of your responses is they broke the law and that's a bad thing.
Yes.
Right? And I'm like, well, that's very interesting. On the one hand, I find it very interesting for you to say that. Right, because on the one hand, I could take the stereotypical and hyperbolic statement and just say, fascist.
Fascist.
You're just about the law, whatever the law is, right?
Yes.
But on the other hand, I'm kind of going, well, I mean, here we've got invasion of privacy, right? So I would expect you two, at some level, to be going, this particular case is wrong.
Yes.
Right?
I think it is.
So they shouldn't be doing that, which means, therefore, the law that's being applied to them here is a good thing. Right? Because they should not be spying on people.
I would modify that. In other words, I would say what they're doing is wrong, and I don't want them doing it to me. But I don't have that right to impose that on anyone else. Because the vast, overwhelming majority of Apple users simply don't care.
Well, we'll get to that. Okay, we will definitely get to that. And then the other thing is, so for me, I think, invasion of privacy is a thing that is important to you guys. That it shouldn't be occurring. However, so that's one aspect of free market capitalism that should be regulated, or at least they should, or the consumer base should be hammering them for.
Can I throw one thing in there that I do want to address before we wrap this up?
Wrap it up.
Or before we go to the end of this episode,
Okay.
I want to talk about why that invasion of privacy is a bad thing, because I suspect that we might be approaching that from different angles.
No, I think invasion of privacy is generally a bad thing.
But I want to know why. What
Okay.
what about that invasion of privacy do you feel is negative? Because I have a suspicion. I got a very strong suspicion that the fellow behind the keyboard over there and I probably are coming at it from a different angle.
I don't think so, but
I have just a question. Is your phone an Apple or are we using Android?
I am currently using an Android.
Okay.
But my latest phone, I've only had this one for 3-4 months now, was an Apple.
Oh, you
was
mean
an iPhone.
previously you had an Apple?
Yeah, prior to this one, it was the only iPhone I've ever had. And I had it for about 5 years.
Yeah.
No.
And I dropped it multiple times.
And it
Yeah,
broke.
Now it's shattered.
Yeah. Because as an example, looking at this privacy, Apple, I can't remember what it's called, but Apple had its own built-in mapping software that nobody used because it was crap. Because Apple had a reputation, like their privacy protections were superior to Androids, right?
Yes. And that was a
Evidently
selling
not,
feature.
except for the
Or
right.
at least that was the reputation.
Yeah, so people use Google Maps was vastly superior because Google was following its users closely and was getting better data
Yes.
than Apple was getting for their mapping software, which is why all Apple users use Waze
Yep.
because Waze is better and has like basically I think probably download some info from Google Maps anyway.
Probably. Yeah.
But yeah, so just as so the lack of privacy allowed Google to create a superior product
Yes.
to what Apple's product was in that. But it was because
Yes.
Google users, and I've been an Android user forever.
Yep.
I've never had an iPhone, and just because it was taking more data from me.
Yes.
So, just as an aside.
So anyway, go on.
So there was a cap, but that's
Yep.
I mean, as a market thing, right?
But it factors in, right?
Right? It created a superior
we
product.
have rewarded these companies
Yeah.
for how would you say infringing upon our privacy.
Well, again, we'll come back to that in a second.
Yeah.
Right. But the other aspect to this that I find is, and this is the slippery slope. This is what we're debating every episode,
Right.
one way or another, is what laws do or do not apply, should or should not apply.
Right.
Is breaking the law unto itself a bad thing, right? Because, and then the obvious thing for me is, well, we had laws in place or rules and regulations in place about getting vaccinated,
Right.
about wearing masks,
Yeah.
right? And
It comes into the question of just versus unjust law.
exactly, right? And so effectively, that's what we're debating all the time. And so when I was saying it's, sometimes I feel like with the quote unquote right or with you guys,
or at least with us, yeah.
Sometimes it's like playing chess with the devil. It's like,
What does that mean?
it means
Like we shift the goalposts a lot?
yeah,
or-
I feel like the goalposts
Right.
are shifted a lot because it's like, like just trying to hammer you down or something.
Well,
you said over here,
nail
X,
the goalposts into place. I think it's probably because we're not explaining ourselves very well. That there's something we're not communicating because it shouldn't be that way.
Well, so in this case, right? I think I've always come up with two head scratches
Yeah.
for me.
Okay.
One is, well, they broke the law and therefore they should be punished, right? Whereas a lot of the time it's
I'm going to write it down just
so
'cause-
in this
so we don't
particular case, it's a law that it's a law or a regulation for a crime or a sin that's been committed by Apple that should not have occurred. They should not be doing this, and therefore the law is applicable here because we like what the law is attempting to mitigate.
So
Right?
why is that a head scratcher?
Because when you say, well, they broke the law and therefore they should be spanked, right? Broad strokes, the statement is they broke the law and they should be spanked.
Yeah.
Right.
So why
Right?
is that?
Because breaking the law is a bad thing,
Right.
right? However, you are not averse to people breaking the law when you,
Thanks, man.
as you just described it, when a law is considered just or unjust. So now Now we're getting into a grayer area, which is okay. This isn't about Apple having broken the law. It's about it having broken a particular law of which you approve.
Okay. So you're saying that we're very conditional in our support of the law.
Yeah. Right. So they broke the law. No, they didn't. They broke a law that you approve of.
Okay.
Right. So
what is the difference between, do you perceive a difference in the laws that we approve of and the laws we don't?
Oh, I'm sure that there are differences.
Do you see a pattern at all?
Yeah, absolutely.
What is that pattern?
Well, I can't. It's all variations on the themes, right?
What's the theme?
What theme?
Well, the theme is. Well,
The look on Steve's face when he fired that at you, like, we've got you now.
in this
I'm not
particular.
trying to nail him down or anything. I'm just trying to figure out your perspective. I'm hoping you can articulate it because I'm trying to understand.
Just the look on your face was like, oh,
Here's hoping.
satisfied.
All right, if I can get a word in edgewise.
Sorry. Carry on.
No, it's okay. Whenever Steve speaks, I'm naturally inclined to just let him speak. He never speaks.
I'm hoping you can articulate what you think this theme is.
Well, it's okay. Laws and regulations that are applied to capitalist entities, to corporations, to businesses, are generally a bad thing, except when they're a good thing.
When are they a good thing?
When they're infringing on people's privacy, for example, right? That's why I'm.
The
That's
corporation, not the law.
That's
The law is
right.
The law is
Exactly, the
protecting
corporation,
Right.
Yeah.
right? So that's why I'm trying. It's like playing whack-a-mole with you guys. It's like,
So what
law is
laws-
bad, law is bad, law is bad.
So
Don't hit
what laws-
free market, blah 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 blah
What
blah.
laws
Oh wait, here's one.
do we come to mind that we don't approve of, or that we say are bad laws?
Taxation.
Okay.
Just any sort of
Gun control.
minimum wage, gun control. Yeah, there's a great
Okay.
one. Right?
You mentioned vax mandates,
Yeah.
mask mandates.
Yeah.
Okay, so gun control, vax mandates, mask mandates, taxation. How many of those are deal with corporate entities?
What? I also brought up minimum
wage. So
I brought up minimum wage.
Yeah, five.
Right?
So five. So two of those, and only one of those deals exclusively with the corporate sector, which is wage.
As examples. Right?
So I'm saying I detect the pattern as being one that does this law that we tend to disapprove of laws that we feel impose restrictions on individual agency, and especially minimum wage, because wage should be a contract negotiation between employer and employee, not the state. Like what does the state have to do with a burger baron in Westlock?
Yep.
Like what do they know about that guy's business? What does some bureaucrat in Edmonton know about Joe's Hot Dogs up in High Level? So why should they have a say in what the contract negotiation is between two individuals? So would you say that, I don't know, Steve, would you say that I'm on the right track? That when we look at laws that we say that is a bad law, we tend to look on how it restricts individual agency?
Yeah, that's how I like to think that we look at it.
Okay.
I'm hoping,
So at least let's say that and then say, okay, Trent, tell us where we're wrong.
Well, I mean, to a certain extent, you're correct, and that's where you're coming from, right? But so I'm going to throw another couple of examples out there. We've got environmental standards that companies are meant to live up to.
Yeah.
Right? We've got safety standards that companies are meant to live up to. Hell, even some companies within themselves have these standards that they state that they're expecting themselves to live up to. On top of which they have efficiency and quality standards that they're meant to live up to in terms of what they're selling to the public. Right?
Well, we got no problem with that.
In all...
Or certainly internal policies. If a company wants to set a higher standard for themselves, well, more power to them. Or if a company negotiates a standard with their employees, well, that's fine.
In all these things, it circles back to using the Apple and the eavesdropping as the example. Again, it's the behavior of corporate entities, right? And we talked about the moral behavior earlier, right? When it comes to, and I think we're seeing this more and more, we have for the last 30 to 60 years in varying degrees, 20 to 60 years in varying degrees, that our society made it to a certain point. I think it probably culminated in the 60s or 70s, probably before Reaganomics, if I had to guess. I don't have the data. But again, I'm just throwing sound bites of information that I've heard along the way.
What happened at this point?
That corporate taxes, actually, and I believe this is the U.S., not Canada I'm talking about, were substantially higher back in the 60s and 70s.
I know for certain income tax was. I don't know about corporate
I'm
tax.
pretty sure corporate tax back in the day was way higher. Like, and for some reason,
I don't know.
For some reason, 64% is sticking in my head, and I don't know why.
I don't know.
Right?
My gut is that it was actually quite low, and that individual income tax was very high.
I think it's the other way around. Anyways, I think we'll find that somewhere in the past, the covenant that society had with corporations and with government, and this includes some, pretty sure Eisenhower, the Eisenhower administration is implicated in this, right? And I don't mean that in a bad way. If there's an antonym for pejorative. But the taxation rate was one that was very high compared to what it is now for corporations, and they were able to live with that, right? At the same time, what we've seen in the last 10 to 20 years is that the standard of living in our society has gone way, 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 way down. And this is why...
From what year, what brackets are we talking about now? That same period? Say that, are you saying late 60s, early 70s to now?
No, I'm talking the last 10 to 20 years.
Oh, okay.
So since the turn of the millennium,
Okay.
right, that CEOs are making like vastly more as a percentage.
Yeah.
And the workers are generally making far less than they used to as a proportion. And it's...
Okay.
And
why is that a bad thing? Like, I hear this cited all the time, this gulf, like that it's a bad thing that a CEO makes $250 million, whereas, say, some of their employees in that company are making $60,000. I've never, ever heard anyone connect those dots. Say, okay, why? Why is it such a bad thing that, say, Leon Draisaitl makes $8 million a year, whereas the stick boy in the Edmonton Oilers makes something like $45,000? Why is that a bad thing? How is that harmful?
Man, if the stick boy for the Edmonton Oilers is making $45,000 a year, I'll be impressed. Right.
Okay,
First of all,
or whatever.
Second of all,
whatever.
Let's
it's
keep,
certainly not more.
Let's keep the entertainment side of things out. Let's keep.
Why? Why is that not applicable?
Because we're not talking about CEOs. I mean.
Oh, okay. Sure. Okay. So let's say
we're talking about celebrities, right?
CEO. Okay. Well, I don't see why it's not relevant, but okay. So why is it a CEO of, say, like Trimac is making 7 figures, and a driver is making like 50 grand, and that's a really bad negative thing? Why?
Well, you compare it to everything else that's going on with food prices going up the way they have been.
Okay.
Right? Energy pricing, the way it's gone up. Now, all the minutiae of microeconomics at this macroeconomic level, all the interaction, all these things. I know there's a lot going on.
Okay.
Right? But I suppose the most egregious example of what people are facing is the housing.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
Rent, whether you're renting, nobody can buy a house.
Yep. Housing costs are out of reach of most people.
Right?
Okay.
And so to me, that is the glaring example of everything else that's going on. So the relative standard of living of most people in our societies has gone way, 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 way down.
Okay.
And, this is part of it.
Okay, so but what's the harm? So I'm like, you're saying that are you saying the narrative I'm getting is that the income disparity, the difference, the delta between the CEO and the driver is harmful. But again, I'm not seeing how the CEO making 7 figures is hurting anyone. I do hear how the low wage at the bottom of the scale is harmful because now that guy can't afford what we consider staples, such as food, housing, this sort of thing. But how is that connected to the guy at the top end? So, for example, if the leader of this construction or transportation company, the CEO, only made, say, $100,000 a year, and the driver makes $50,000, is the driver any better off?
Depends on how that's calculated and approached. And
so why is a guy who makes $50,000 a year for a boss who makes $250 million worse off than the $50,000 income guy who works for a boss making $100,000?
I'll take a step back far enough to state that in terms of the mathematics involved, the specific math, right? You're right. The guy at the top making X does not necessarily, changing what he's at doesn't necessarily raise the Y or the W or the Z amount that the worker at the bottom is making. But to me, it is indicative of, I'll just call the moral sickness of the situation we've got in place, right?
Why? What is this moral sickness? Again, I'm trying to find the causality. I'm trying to find the why here. Now, can I throw something at you? Do you feel that it's because of a fixed sum, like a zero-sum game, that if the CEO is making $250 million, if he took less, if he made $250,000, that would be millions more that could be paid to the drivers and the dispatchers and the mechanics. Is that where you're kind of coming from?
Yes and no. I mean, that is one approach to the thought processes here, right? When we, I've run into this a lot in business operations.
In your own business.
That when a company's looking at, the shipping department is not efficient, right? We better cut a position, right? Because they're $4,500 over budget, right? Let's get rid of someone.
Yeah.
Right. So now there's a person who's unemployed.
Right.
So now all of a sudden, for me, that $25 million that the CEO is making, where's the efficiency?
Right.
This company goes, we got some inefficiencies. Best be cutting
somebody in the shipping department. So how do we determine who should make what?
Again, we're getting into cultural and social and societal values.
How do we answer that question? Who is qualified to answer that question?
Again, to me, it's a whole lot of common sense.
Okay.
That we've talked about in many different ways, right? So what's happened in our... Well, a lot of corporations have offshored...
manufacturing for certain.
Manufacturing for sure.
Yep.
Right? So now we've taken that away, right? a lot of companies have automated,
Yep.
right? You got a one-time capital expense for a piece of equipment,
Yep.
and
And it pumps out widgets.
and it costs 10 salaries of
Yep. It replaces
employees.
Yeah, it replaces, say, 10 employees. Yep.
And we get rid of those 10 employees. It takes a year to pay it off.
Yep.
Right? Now I don't have to. Now the machine's paying for itself.
Yep.
So
are you saying that's a bad thing? Because it replaced those 10 workers.
to me, it's a race to the bottom. Right? Everything that we're talking about here is
it's a bad
race
thing.
to the bottom. Yeah. Because if everybody does that, and I think this is part of what we're looking at.
Why
right?
is it a bad thing?
If there's nobody, okay, let's say we've automated all the jobs in Canada.
Yeah.
And we've offshored the rest. We've automated half, and we've offshored the other half.
Yep.
Right.
So
Now-
where we were employing,
now-
say, 30 guys on a shop floor, now we're employing like 3.
Well, let's say everyone's doing this. So to use the
Yeah.
exaggerated example, now we've got nobody employed in Canada, right? Because it's machines doing all the work, or it's all being manufactured overseas, right?
Yeah.
So now, no Canadian. Not only do they can't afford food and they don't have anywhere to live,
Yeah.
right? But they don't have any money to purchase the products that are being made by these machines or being made by your company offshore.
Okay. If
Right?
there's okay.
So there's nobody to buy your stuff, so you're having to sell to other people. The government of Canada isn't making any income tax.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
Well, it'll be making corporate taxes.
I mean, corporate tax.
If these businesses are based in Canada that you're talking about, they will pay. If they have operations in Canada, they will have to pay taxes to the
And
government.
property tax.
yeah.
Now, your fictional scenario is
It's not fictional, it's exaggerated.
Sure.
but it's not. It's
The
there's
standard
there's
of
a
living
point.
in Canada has dropped.
Sure, but there's a point where, in your exaggerated scenario, everything falls off the cliff and it becomes utterly unsustainable. Okay. Now, we can never get to the point where nobody's employed, right? Like, because if you got factories full of robots,
Someone's got to service the robot.
you need robot mechanics,
I get that.
right?
Yeah,
and even if
but-
those robot
but-
mechanics are robots, somebody eventually is going to have to fix the robot that fixes 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 the robot.
Yeah, but you've got diminishing return.
Sure. Like, I get what you're saying, but also, why...
This is
why
one of
does
those-
a guy make it, like we're talking about making widgets? Buddy has offshored half his widgets. Now he's got robots making the other way. Why did he start making widgets in the first place? Like, are you saying that he should not be allowed? Like, if I form a company that I'm not allowed to run that company as I desire, like, why did I start running these widgets? Because I felt I could do this to improve my own situation in life. Are you saying now that somebody should, from outside, who doesn't know me, who knows nothing about me, can step in and say, oh, no, hold on, Paddy. You only get to do with your life what I tell you get to do with your life. You only get to run your company the way I tell you get to run your company. You say, well, I can improve my situation and my standard of living if I reduce my costs, which means offshoring and building some stuff, say in China, and then bringing in these robots. I can do better for myself and my children. You say, oh, no, you don't get to do that.
But here's the problem. Here's the problem. Back to the first part of your question there. The reason you started building widgets is because somebody wanted to buy widgets.
Somebody wanted to buy widgets.
Right? You can't build widgets if nobody wants to buy widgets.
Right.
Right?
But I sell them all over the world.
So if you create a structure and you work with the government, because there would have to be like crony capitalism to get this entire situation where everything's automated and nobody works. But why would you work to take away your own market for your own product? Right? Like that's what you're exaggerating.
Assuming that I only sold locally. That there's no global market.
But who
I think that's what's happening.
Who only sells everything internationally, though? Right? Like,
I think a lot of guys. I mean, China does not consume its own production.
it consumes some of its own production, but
Very
it doesn't.
little. The vast majority of China's industrial production is
China
exported.
builds majority for export,
Same thing
as do the Indians.
Same thing with Germany. The vast majority of Germany's, like say in its automobile production and industrial production, is exported.
Okay, yeah.
So it's a global marketplace.
but not exclusively exported. And those
No,
places,
but-
yeah, it is a global
but a lot
marketplace.
of it.
Like,
So the idea that it goes back to the analogy given that Henry Ford wanted to, which is a myth, but it's commonly said that Henry Ford wanted his guys paid a certain amount so they could all afford to buy his car. Well,
Yeah.
it's not true, but number one, it doesn't matter if if the guys in Detroit working the Ford assembly plant can't afford to buy his car. That doesn't matter because he's exporting to everywhere across North America.
right.
Like he's sending cars to California, to Florida, to Arkansas, to New York, whatever. It doesn't matter if the guys who immediately live in Detroit can't afford to buy his car. It's irrelevant to him. As long as there's somebody somewhere.
Exactly. So
Who
we
can
become a
afford to buy
banana
his
republic.
product.
If we were to look at the data,
Okay.
right, I'm going to suggest something.
Okay.
That if we go back, I don't know, 40 years
Yeah.
to one of our booms,
Okay.
the relationship between GDP, between minimum wage, standard of living, and unemployment rates
Yeah.
would all be, that whole relationship would be a lot healthier for the Canadian economy than it is now.
If only somebody were in charge telling people how to run their lives and businesses, right? If we had some like omnipotent leader who was like someone of action who could tell companies, you're going to do this, you're not going to do that.
Well,
what
no,
you're
I'm just saying, let's go back to how things,
Okay.
let's look at how
Okay.
things were 40 years ago
Okay.
and look at the relationship between
Yeah.
those things, right?
Okay, so you said GDP, minimum wage. What were the other ones?
Unemployment rate.
Unemployment. Okay.
There was a fourth, can't remember what it was.
Two of them immediately work at cross purposes. Minimum wage will increase your unemployment. This is economics 101.
Yeah.
If you have a high minimum wage, you will have higher unemployment. This is a trade-off that is made. This is understood. So those are cross purposes. So which one is more important to you? Can't have both.
Standard of living was the third one. No, the
Okay,
fourth
so
one.
GDP, standard of living, and then which of the other two?
Okay, so let's take minimum wage out of there.
Okay, and I would
Now
agree.
that
I think
Steve's
it's-
called it up on the
Okay.
on the screen.
Okay. $8 an hour.
That's adjusted for
1985.
inflation.
Yeah. Oh, really? Oh, yeah. That's cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So anyway, go on. So you're talking about standard of living, GDP, employment.
Yeah.
Back during our last boom.
No, let's just go back 40 years.
Oh, 40 years. Okay. So in the
Right.
80s. Okay.
And just look at a boom time and say, okay,
Yep.
this is how the economy worked. This is how the
Well, do you want to look at a boom time or you want to go back 40 years?
Yeah. You can't have both. Which one?
Well, I hear what I've heard is that the economy goes in cycles,
Yeah.
and they tend to go every few years.
Yeah, but the 80s were not a boom.
There was
Yeah,
no
like-
boom in the 80s?
When the
No.
Free Trade Act come in, or Free Trade Agreement, the
Yeah, FTA.
FTA before
Yeah.
NAFTA,
Yeah.
that was 86, wasn't it?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
the first or early 80s, we were still
No,
recovering.
it was it was.
We
not
were
a-
still recovering from the Trudeau years.
It was not a great time.
It was good in Alberta because we had Klein, but it was bad in Eastern Canada.
Well, we didn't have Klein in 86.
we had
Klein-
him in 82, didn't we?
No,
No, Klein was still. He was a reporter in '82. He was mayor of Calgary till the '90s. I
Okay,
think.
yeah, I guess
Yeah,
maybe you're right.
yeah.
Okay,
Klein
now
was in the
it's me
90s.
eating now it's me drinking the IMP water. Okay, but yeah, like Canada's economy was still struggling in the early 80s as a whole because we were still recovering from
Yeah.
the Trudeau years.
Yeah,
It was
there
mid 80s by the time the upward cycle began.
Yeah, well, because like I remember, it was probably 83 or 84.
Mm-hmm.
Like my dad was hauling for McCoy Brothers, so we were doing. He was doing export
Yep.
work. So there's springs being made here, and the biggest customer
Yep.
for McCoy's at the time was Kenworth
Yep.
off-road division, who and all their big, heavy like C500 and off-road highway trucks were built in Kansas City. So that was my dad's regular gig, and even that was so slow that we were one day trolling the ditches looking for cans so we could go to McDonald's for lunch.
Yeah.
I didn't realize at the time. He told me that later. That's why
That's how bad things were.
That's why I made you walk to Tollfield in the ditch.
Yeah.
Looking for cans. I was like, holy fuck.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was that bad.
Yeah.
And my ADD was so bad that I couldn't, like, my sister was like cleaning up. And I'm
you're
walking by everything and I'm not seeing anything, right? I'm just like, my sister's like, filling bags and bags, and I've walked 5 miles and I found 4 cans.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah, what the
See,
hell?
that's why we need minimum wage.
So anyway, okay, so you were going somewhere with these 3 factors.
I'm just saying, like, I would not be surprised to the extent that I'd be willing to bet something on the fact that they were healthier back then as a ratio, as an interactive.
That employment, standard of living, and GDP.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd contest that.
And
when all 3 of those are high, things are pretty good. Or that if your GDP is good and your employment is high, then your standard of living across the board is high.
That ratio compared to the ratio that we have now would be drastically different.
Well, right now, our GDP is very low.
Yes, our GDP, Ontario.
Last I heard, we were either just ahead of Italy or just behind Italy in the.
I think that's productivity.
It's worse than that.
Yeah.
No. But
and productivity is a shit measurement as a word. Like it's one of those. I don't think that word means what they think it means, because this was the Bank of Canada using the term productivity. Productivity just means volume of output.
Yeah. Okay.
It has
GDP
nothing
per
to do.
capita.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the quality of the product put out, and it has nothing to do with the efficiency of the resources used to produce it.
It's not an all-encompassing metric, but it is. But no metric is. So it's useful, but not in isolation. It's useful in conjunction with other metrics.
Well, to me, productivity is shit.
No, I think it's a good metric. Just
It's not
by itself.
If you're putting out 100 things and 50 of them suck, and you have to rework them all, that's productivity.
Sure, it is, but it's also, like I said, it's in isolation. It doesn't tell you much. But what statistic in isolation does? Like employment? In pure isolation, does your employment rate give you the full picture? Of course not. But as in conjunction with other metrics, then it's useful to look at, particularly in the Canadian context. So anyway, but I don't think what you're saying is controversial, because like you look at today, our employment rate, it's not the worst it's ever been, but it is bad. Like it's certainly worse now than it was, say, 15, 20 years ago. Yeah. Our GDP is low. Our standard of living is definitely low.
We were talking before we started recording about the Peterson's interview with Polyev.
Yes.
And they were talking about it. The richest, this is not a great way, but GDP per capita, highest GDP per capita by province in Canada is in Ontario. Mm-hmm. Ontario ranks behind Mississippi, which is the worst U.S. state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we are in bad shape. Now, how much a lot of that is simply because of the terrible mismanagement over the last 10 years.
Oh, there's no question. And there are a whole bunch of reasons that things are bad in this country. And that's one. Like,
most of them are sitting in Ottawa right now. But we're talking a bit more longitudinal, right? Like, we're not just talking the last 10 years. You're talking, say, over the last, say, 30 or 40.
I'm talking at least 20.
Right?
That's
20.
That's why I'd go, actually, let's go back to prior to Justin Trudeau.
Yep.
And go back 10 years from there.
Yeah,
right?
so let's say turn of the millennium.
Turn of the millennium.
Yep.
And then compare that to what was before that. Right?
Okay.
It's kind of compare that to 20 years before that. Right?
Yeah. But again, how does this... So tie me that to income disparity.
So just... GDP per capita in the year 2000 was 24,271.
This is Canada?
This
as
is Canada.
measured in U.S. dollars.
This is Canada.
Okay.
But yeah, in U.S. dollars. Sorry. I don't know why it's in U.S. dollars, but yes, this is Canada.
Probably for comparison to other
and the annual
other
growth
countries.
rate was 8.76%.
Yeah.
So going to 1980, annual growth rate was higher,
Yeah,
11.22%.
Yeah, definitely was higher going through the 60s and 70s, and then it kind of trailed off in the 80s.
Look at the annual growth rate. Like, look at the spike in 2021 after coming off COVID.
Yeah, but that's the COVID bounce, right?
Yeah.
Look
Like, that was
immediately.
a big
yeah.
bump. And then,
But look at what it did immediately before and immediately after.
yeah.
So that was a
That's
quick
an
bump.
aberration.
Yeah.
And well, I mean, it's
Yeah.
and it's a natural aberration given
Well,
the,
but-
the
Yeah.
trough from before.
What the
that.
heck happened
What
in
happened
like
in
2002, 2003?
99.
Because like we were in the doldrums all through 1990 to the millennium.
Yeah, we were negative growth in 92, 93,
Yeah.
94.
We're for anyone, for the one person, for Corey in Calgary, we're looking at a graph, a visual graph, and it's showing that in our growth really nosedives
yeah.
in the 1990s, and it's really flat. Like it's not doing much of anything right up until about 2003. Then all of a sudden, kerpow! It jumps up and then slowly, gradually declines until 2009 when the bottom falls out.
Okay, so
What happened?
we know what happened in 2009.
Was that a global oil price drop? I think it was.
2009?
Yeah.
2003. You want to, what was the spike
Well, yeah.
in 2000?
What caused everything to go great in 2003, and then the bottom to fall out in 2009?
2009 was the housing crisis.
Oh yeah.
And so, and that was, we were
And the international banking crisis.
inevitably going to come around to that
Yeah.
because that was not self-regulating.
No,
Right.
it was not. It was highly government regulated
But-
in the United States. Highly. That
Now-
was a failure of government.
Absolutely. And
100%.
And the damage that we suffered from it was exclusively due to basically Canadian banks' exposure to American mortgage debt.
Same thing with Iceland.
Yeah.
Icelandic banks were hugely exposed to that.
Oh yeah,
And it was all-
Iceland
and it
was
was-
fucked.
Yeah, and it was all
I thought we were
leveraged into the U.S. housing market.
I thought we were actually insulated because Harper was actually governing Canada relatively well compared to the Americans.
Yes.
It could have been worse.
It could have
We
been
were.
way worse for us. Yes.
No, but
Way worse.
Harper even said at the time, like he was concerned. He wasn't concerned about Canadian banks. Like it was Americans were falling. He gave an
Yeah.
interview and he wasn't worried about Canadian banks, Canadian mortgages, but I'm wording this wrong. He wasn't worried about Canadian mortgages and Canadian default rates, but he was worried about Canadian banks' exposure to the U.S. default rates.
And also our dependence upon exports to the American economy.
Yeah.
When the American economy nosedived,
Yeah, in the wake of that.
our GDP took a massive hit because our economy was tied completely to exporting materials and products to the United States, which they couldn't afford to buy.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
But it is important to note that the mortgage crisis in the United States was caused by the two guys who sponsored the bill.
Yeah. and the
the two guys who sponsored
The bill to do the bank
Yeah.
reform in the wake of it.
But you know what? I would even go back. It goes all the way back to the 1960s.
Chris Dodd and Barney. Well, sure. Well, it goes back. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the creation
Which,
of,
like,
of,
yeah,
Fra-
exactly.
of Bernie Mac and Fannie Mae.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so Chris Dodd, who was the senator,
Yeah.
and Barney Frank, who was in the House of Representatives, co-sponsored the bill called Dodd-Frank bill or
Yeah.
Dodd-Frank Act, which was the bill that came in the wake of the housing collapse.
Right.
But the committees they headed, they would constantly bring on like bank CEOs and bank executives and berate them for not giving loans to poor people who couldn't pay them back. And so, those two individually, like they were literally the two biggest culprits of the whole.
Yeah,
frickin'
if
thing.
you're looking for two primary villains.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like my argument here is that going back into the 1960s, you looked at any indicator you wanted, any discipline of sociology you wanted. And it showed that home ownership was a good thing.
Yes.
And so governments, not just in America, although particularly in North America and Australia and New Zealand, but across the board, across the Western world, governments looked at home ownership as an unaltered or unadulterated good. It was an absolute good.
And this is like based a lot on work done by Daniel Patrick Moynihan.
Yes.
Before he was.
He was very influential in this.
Yeah.
That just getting people to own their own homes was a good thing for society.
Yeah.
So governments should facilitate that.
Yeah.
And so, yes, the creation in the United States of savings and loans that were guaranteed by the government or completely owned outright by the government as a way to facilitate these loans to people who would not otherwise be able to afford them.
Yeah.
And this pile of regulation and subsidy building up over 35 years created that housing bubble that finally collapsed in 2009. I'm sorry. Hollywood can make all the movies they want on this to try and deflect and distract. But if you look at the work of a serious economist, like namely Thomas Sowell on this, the reality is that this was a failure of overregulation, 100%, and you cannot blame it.
And Hollywood doesn't really get it wrong. Like, there's basically 3 good movies about that.
Like The Big Short totally gets it wrong. The Big Short blames it on Wall Street.
Yeah. Okay, The Big Short doesn't go far enough in explaining how government incentivized Wall Street's actions. Yeah.
Yes,
right.
How government enabled bad actors.
Yeah, but
so people are going to be bad. Bad people are going to be bad.
There was 3 movies that came out in the wake of that.
But it's the role of government to protect us from bad people. And when government gets involved and the unintended consequence, like when government overregulates and sticks their fingers, starts telling people how to do things, and then that creates a system that can be gamed by bad actors.
Yeah.
Whereas if government had just stayed the hell out of it.
Oh my God!
No, but
this is where
you tell me where I'm wrong.
Are you being serious right now?
I am 100% serious.
No, because you got to understand that Bernie Mac and Freddie Mae were essentially doing for home mortgages what the U.S. Department of Education and the U.S. government as a whole does for
schools,
student loans for post-secondary education.
Yes.
They basically said, we're guaranteeing the mortgages, and they did that until they couldn't anymore.
Yeah, and then look what happened to the cost of tuition.
Oh, yeah.
They said, we're going to give a student loan to anybody who wants it, guaranteed 100%.
Yeah. So the same kind of government interference from those 2 government institutions, Bernie Mac and Fannie Mae.
Yeah. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac.
Freddie Mac, sorry. Bernie Mac.
Yeah.
Bernie Mac, the comedian. Yeah, sorry. Fannie.
Yeah.
Anyway, they were subsidizing bad loans.
And we've done the same thing. Like governments around, like I said, the big 4, like North America, Australia, New Zealand, were particularly egregious in this. But Canada was not immune to this. We did the same thing where we started mucking around with Canadian mortgage.
That's basically what CMHC does, right?
Yeah. Where we start manipulating the market and dictating how loans are going to be made independently of the 2 primary actors in the loan. In other words,
the applicant and the bank.
The applicant and the bank.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've taken people who suffer no consequences for their decisions and imposed them into this transaction. And that's why we have these problems. You tell me where I'm wrong. You tell me where I'm wrong.
I cannot believe what just came out of your mouth.
Climb off your high horse and start giving me some facts. You tell me where I'm wrong.
You just told me, on the one hand, this was fascinating for me.
Yep.
You just said out loud that bad actors are bad actors are bad. There's always going to be bad actors.
There's always going to be bad actors.
And they're going to be acting bad. And that's been my fucking point the whole time.
Yes.
Capitalism itself provides the impetus, the motivation for bad actors. Okay. And there are a lot of bad actors under capitalism. And you're
saying that the public sector has no bad actors? That if we eliminated capitalism, there would be no bad actors? Is that what you're saying?
Now you're just gaslighting me.
No.
You fucking well are. There is no,
you make a statement, then the obverse is true. If you're saying A is good, then B must be bad.
No.
So if capitalism is full of bad actors and enables bad actors, then the lack of capitalism would remove those bad actors?
That's not what I'm saying.
Then please clarify.
I'm responding to you. So do not drag the public sector into this. That's another episode altogether.
Oh, okay.
All right?
Okay.
I do not like the public sector. I am shocked, and I've said this before, I am shocked at how even I'm going, oh my God, I cannot believe how massive the public sector is in this country right now.
It is unsustainable.
It's and how much that was increased by the current government in the last 10 years.
Okay, okay, let's take the public sector out of it, but continue your articulation about how capitalism is.
Yeah.
So
you're on a capitalism is evil.
Go back to capitalism is evil.
You were saying that there were a bunch of bad actors that acted bad.
Exploited this system.
I would actually argue with Paddy on this one. He said there was a bunch of bad actors.
Yep.
There wasn't bad actors. There was a bad incentive structure. Okay. And so the people, so those government institutions created an incentive structure where they said, we're guaranteeing these loans that you wouldn't otherwise, that if we weren't here, you wouldn't make these loans because you have no confidence that people are going to pay it back. Right. That's the bank's fundamental decision, right?
Okay.
You ask for a loan. Do we think you'll pay it back?
The answer is no.
If the answer is no, we don't give you a loan. If the answer is yes, we give you the loan.
Right. So the answer is no. And then the government stepped in
and said, no, we're going to guarantee these loans.
So they said, okay,
fine.
Right.
We collect interest. We're getting interest from somebody, right?
Yeah.
We're making money from somebody, whether it's the taxpayer.
Whether it's the debtor or the taxpayer.
Or the taxpayer. We're getting it, right? So the government created the incentive structure, and the capitalists just acted according to the incentives.
Fair. Okay.
Right? So to call these people...
I stand corrected. It wasn't bad actors. It was people responding to a bad incentive structure.
Right?
Okay?
And it's the same incentive structure in education loans.
Oh, my God.
Okay.
Like I said,
how does this apply
playing chess with the devil is like...
Okay, how are we moving goalposts here?
At no point are the capitalists wrong for their actions.
No.
Well,
the capitalists...
tell us the flaw in our logic.
So now, if I understand where this conversation is going, the government bailing out all these free market capitalist institutions was actually...
They didn't bail them out. They set the rules of the game. It's not that they came in after the fact to bail them out. They set this up from the beginning. They created this house and told people to move into it. So then they did. It's not like capitalists got, like Steve said, would they have given these loans on their own accord? The answer is no. They would not have. But then the government stepped in and said, we will guarantee those loans. So they said, okay, we have no reason not to give the loans now, so we'll give the loans. So the government built the structure. You can't say that, I retract what I said. Yeah, it's not fair to say that these guys were bad dudes for doing what they did. The government said, we want you to give loans to people who you otherwise would not give loans to because we want to increase their intentions were good. So they said, okay, we'll give these loans so long as you back them up, as long as you guarantee them. And the government said, yeah, we're going to do that. So inevitably, when the loans collapsed, then government had to honor their commitment and say, okay, we're gonna guarantee those loans. What part of my analogy or what part of what I said is wrong? What part is factually inaccurate? It's not. Am I wrong? Did I capture your argument sufficiently?
So 100% of the problem was created by the government.
100% of the problem.
At no point did the financial institutions in question overstep their bounds or take this to extents that maybe were unwise.
Okay. So what should they have done? With that incentive structure, what should they have done? Should they have still said, no, we're not going to make that loan because we feel that you can't pay it back? Even though the government will guarantee it, and the government is encouraging us to do this because we feel it is a social good, we're not going to give you that loan because we don't think you can pay it back. Should they have said that?
Let me ask a hypothetical.
Okay.
Did the government perhaps say, well, let's not be stupid about this. Did they say, okay, you're currently not giving it to people with a debt to service ratio of
X to Y.
X to Y, right? So we'd like you to extend to X to Y.
Maybe to X to Z.
To Y to Z.
Yeah.
Right? But not farther than Y to Z. Now, did those institutions go, well, fuck it, let's just keep going? Right? Now let's do Z to double A.
I don't think so, but I'm going to defer to Steve on this one.
I don't believe so either, but I don't know. I can't really answer that question. I don't think they did because the government's we're extending our subsidies of loans to a point, and then there's no incentive to loan past that point because you're trying to make money. Right?
Yeah. You want to get the interest payments on that loan.
Yeah. You want to get the interest payments on. Now, of course, this gets muddled up with once people figured out you could get group loan, and this is what led to the collapse, is once you could
sell these bad loans.
You could group debt together in loans and sell that as an equity.
Yeah,
or as
a derivative or something.
Derivative. That's the term I was looking for. As an aside, I met a derivatives trader on a motorcycle tour in Greece.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
The guy was Canadian-born, lived in New York.
Okay. Makes sense as a derivatives trader that he'd be in New York.
Yeah, he lived in New York, but he was Canadian-born, and at one point he said to me he was more Canadian than I was, even though he lived in New York for 20 years and was a fucking derivatives trader. But anyway. In 2009, it occurred to me. I met him in 2006.
Yeah.
And in 2009, it occurred to me he probably lost his fucking shirt, and that made me happy.
Okay.
But that's a complete... No, that's
okay.
But
why would he have lost his shirt if the government was guaranteeing all this?
Because he didn't hold the derivatives. Well, he traded them, right?
Okay.
Right. The derivatives market collapsed.
Right, because he bought them at a high value, and then all of a sudden they tanked in value.
They tanked. Yeah.
So okay. I'm a socialist. I don't know about this capitalist jingoism that you guys are using.
Stock market
explain to me a derivative.
A derivative is... Well, he explained this to me, and I still kind of... A derivative is a very confusing thing. But a derivative is basically you take groups of debt. Okay, pools of debt. So you have... and it was mortgages specifically they were trading.
Okay.
So... The bank would say, okay, we've got these mortgages. These people owe us this money. You want to buy these mortgages from us, and then this money will go to you.
It's basically we're selling an IOU.
Yeah. Literally, that's what it was. So
I have an IOU for $100. I will divide this IOU of $100 into 100 $1 portions, and then I will sell those $1 portions for whoever wants it.
So they grouped a bunch of mortgages.
Yeah, and what they would do is they would
so let's say they grouped $52 mortgages into $100, and then they're offering $1 shares of that $100.
The thing was, it was kind of the other way around.
Okay, whatever.
It was groups of they would group a whole bunch of mortgages, and the thing was, they would group the mortgages by their likelihood of being paid off. Kind of thing.
Okay.
And so then
some were high risk, some were low risk.
So they would have high risk mortgages, and then when they pulled them to sell them as a derivative, they would hit here's some really good, really good more interest rate, really good chance of being paid off. Here's 20 of those, and here's 80 ones that are going to be garbage.
Yeah,
right. That are 80 mortgages where 55 of them are probably going to default, kind of thing. And so we group this together. And so they would group all that, and then somebody would buy it, and then sell it again, and sell it again. But the bank got their money.
So a hot potato.
It was a hot potato. All this debt was moving around. The bank took the money from the derivatives and washed their hands of the mortgage.
They walked away.
They were done. They had they got the money they wanted out of it.
In other words, they got their initial loan back by the sale of these derivatives on the market.
Even though it was guaranteed by the government in the first place.
To the bank.
To the bank.
To the bank.
Then
To the bank.
So if the bank...
then the guarantees...
Hang on.
Yeah.
Hang on.
Yeah.
If the bank had held on to it, the government had guaranteed it.
Yeah.
And so if the defaults had occurred, the bank would have gotten the money from the government.
Eventually.
Okay?
Eventually. I think.
No,
Yeah,
but because this has been an argument that you guys have used up to
Yep.
this point. All right.
Yep.
Now it's no longer with the bank, and the government had guaranteed the banks, not anyone else. Now the bank's selling it to other people.
Yes.
Okay. All
now,
right.
your question is...
Doesn't sound shady to me. Okay.
Oh, no, it's 100% shady. The derivatives market is 100% shady.
Yeah.
Okay, and the banks fed into this. Even though they were guaranteed
Yes.
to get their money back, they decided to do this. Okay.
I'd like to blame this on government, but I can't. I don't know how. I don't know enough about derivatives. No, I would like to.
Sorry for you.
Because
That must be so
Look, they-
tough.
I'll take a crack at it.
Must be breaking your hearts here.
I can take
No,
it.
it
I
does
can.
break.
I can blame government for
Okay.
this. When you're done, you let me
the
know.
derivatives, the idea of a derivative was a creation of Wall Street. It was not a creation of the government.
Yeah.
So
fair
somebody on Wall Street got the idea of, hey, if we can bundle these things.
enough. Yep.
So the only place where I can figure out the government's to blame, basically, somebody on Wall Street said, hey, we can bundle these things and turn them into a product that we can sell.
We can sell.
So they went to the SEC and said, hey, can we do this? And the SEC said yes. And this
Yep.
is the only place that I know. Now, my knowledge of this is obviously very incomplete. So they did this, and the SEC said, yes, you can do this. And that created
Yep.
the derivatives market.
Derivatives market for housing
No.
mortgages. Yeah.
So, but part of this is, and I think this, I don't know if this goes to to corporate law in the States, but now we have this culture in publicly traded companies, and it's kind of, and it at least goes to the point of civil litigation,
Yeah.
right? The role of corporate management in a publicly traded company, their first primary responsibility, and I think this is net negative, is to return value to the shareholders, right? So bank
And
CEOs...
you think that's a net negative? Interesting.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I think it's a net negative. That's I always. So it has resulted, like, at the time that this became the thing, and you asked me, I might have said, okay, yeah, that makes sense. The purpose of companies is to make money for their owners, right? And that is the purpose of companies, is to make money for their owners. The problem is that creates so many negative counter effects.
This is cutting edge neoconservative thought. I should
Right.
point that out. This, like,
And I don't
Steve's
mean to
view, is cutting edge neoconservative. It kind of runs contrary to, say, Milton Friedman.
I'm
And
not.
classical conservative economics. Or what I say classical is maybe I'll say traditional conservative economics.
Okay.
But remember, and this point has come up. Traditional conservative economics are actually traditional libertarian economics.
Yes.
But anyway,
Austrian school.
yeah. But no, it's true.
it's cool. It's,
Yeah.
it's,
But
I'm just offering that. You might find that interesting.
But so anyway, so now publicly traded companies, including the banks that we saw these issues with in 2008, we're looking at a way to maximize profits. So if you can get your debt off your books and turn that into money right away, that's immediate value for shareholders. So this, and I don't know to what extent legislation contributes to this culture, but I know that like CEOs, board members, all these people can be fired easily and legitimately for not maximizing shareholder value. It's called fiduciary responsibility, and it's the primary responsibility of managers in publicly traded companies. This is a negative incentive structure, absolutely. And like I say, I don't know to what extent it is caused by government or what extent it is just the culture of publicly traded companies. But it causes corporations to. It's what leads to offshoring. It causes corporations to not invest enough in capital expenditures. It causes corporations to.
I want to take a crack at this when he's done.
To do all kinds of things that somebody who is saying, okay, we need to make a profit, but we don't necessarily need to maximize the profit because there's other things we might want to invest profits in. Whereas publicly traded companies are essentially extract as much value from the company and distribute it to shareholders and dividends. A privately owned held company can say, okay, well, we need to do, a CEO of a publicly traded company has to argue to the shareholders that no, I can't give you this money as dividends because we have to
reinvest.
We have to reinvest the capital expenditure to renovate this factory to build electric vehicles, or to build batteries, or to do whatever, or to it's just old and needs new tooling, right?
Okay.
So a corporate
This is wild. Okay.
And the shareholders can remove the CEO if they say, no, we disagree.
We just want the value. Whereas a privately held corporate company guy can say, okay, no, this
is my company. I'm doing what I want with it.
So the management of the banks that were selling off this debt as what was the word?
Dividends.
No.
Well, no, as derivatives.
Or
As
derivatives. Sorry,
derivatives.
yeah.
We're doing this because their primary responsibility
is to maximize shareholders.
And so by getting rid of debt, the books looked better.
Yeah. But also making the loans.
Yeah.
Right? So they have dual incentive structures to maximize profits, right? Because they're getting the money from the government if the loans default.
Yeah.
Before they can offload the loans on someone else.
Yeah.
Right? So they have the incentive structure that the government created, and they have the corporate incentive structure that says they have to maximize.
Knowing that
the
government was not responsible for covering the debt if it went to someone other than the banks.
I'm going to dispute. I do not believe that. I do not believe that was the case. That the debt was to be guaranteed no matter what. But the banks didn't want that on their books because, number one, they knew these debts, they strongly suspected these debts were bad because they never would have made the loans had they not been guaranteed by the government.
Yeah.
Right.
The only reason why they did so was because ultimately they were not going to lose their money. However, the opportunity cost was still extremely high. When the mortgage holder defaults and can't afford that mortgage, then the bank has to go to the government to get the value of the mortgage. This takes a huge amount of time. Takes a huge amount of time and effort, and that time and effort has a monetary cost.
And also, they also have to go repossess the home and then auction the home.
Exactly. There's a lot of administrative costs that the banks simply didn't want, especially when it got to the scale that it did. I mean, again, this is where I'm saying this
we're
problem...
talking trillions of dollars.
This problem had been growing for 30 years.
Right.
And the level of exposure was, okay, this is getting really high. If it goes under... This is going to cost us a lot of money simply through the time and administration that we're on the hook for these bad assets while we're waiting for the government to get to us. Let's distribute this risk, so we're going to sell them as derivatives. So then you get savings and loans, you get financial companies who say, okay, or investment funds who say, okay, we're going to take this bundled up debt. Yes, we believe that probably 80% of these are going to go bad. 20% are going to be good. However, the profit that comes from these 20% is going to be more than the loss of value in the time and administration costs of getting recompense from the government on the other 80%. And that's why they were still able to trade them. To sell them back and forth on the stock market because they were still going to be guaranteed. It was still going to be done. It's a question of how much time, how much effort, like how much administration is this going to cost? How much is that going to cost you? But the 20% which are still paying interest is going to more than cover for that. So you're still making money. Now, are you making a lot of money? No. But you are making a positive. It's still going to be in the black, just like every other stock that you buy in a company. It's a whole investment portfolio that where you got 1,000 little things all making a little bit of money at a time, and the cumulative effect is good. However, there were so many of these on the market that when it went bad, when they started, and of course the other external factors changed, like say interest rate or what have you. I don't know what the exact trigger was, but when it did start causing people to not be able to afford their mortgage payments.
Yeah. Interest rates went up a bit, and then it just caused a massive...
Yeah. And then it was, the first few started falling, and then it had that domino effect.
And it's also important to remember that the banks that the government ended up having to bail out, even like, so, I can't remember if I think Wells Fargo had
was one of them,
had to be bailed. So Wells Fargo had, Wells Fargo had like a retail banking thing, but It was their investment side that was going down.
Yeah,
It was going
like
to take
Lehman
them down.
Brothers.
Yeah,
And
Lehman Brothers is investment
Goldman
bank.
Sachs.
And Goldman
Yep.
Sachs are investment banks. There's no retail. There's no Goldman. You can't go down
Yeah.
to a Goldman Sachs branch or a Lehman Brothers branch.
And
Right.
get like a mortgage.
Yeah.
Or a
So
car
they
loan.
were investment banks, and they had these. They had bought these derivatives from guys like Wells Fargo, but Wells Fargo had then bought derivatives in their investment side, right? You know,
from
so-
like Citibank.
from
or,
Citi. Yeah. Well, I think Citibank got barreled.
Or
you know,
whoever the retail banks were.
So yeah, the retail banks that made the loans and sold the
Yeah.
the derivatives to the investment banks, and it was the investment banks when
Yeah.
the loans started to default that lost their shirts, and it was the investment
Yeah.
banks that had to get bailed out.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it. Why are we talking about being bailed out?
That's a good question.
Well,
Right?
that's the thing.
Why are we defining it in those terms? If everything, all the debt was guaranteed by the government, no matter who ended up holding those hot potatoes, right? If it was
were-
guaranteed that the government was going to
Cover the cost of the mortgage.
cover those costs, then why are we talking about anything in the terms of bailout?
Because it was the value of the derivative had been going up.
And it exceeded the values of the mortgage.
So let's say that derivative was sold by the bank to an investment firm for $100. The investment firm sold it to another investor for 102. Because the economy was growing. You see, like the economy had been growing all steadily from the 60s onwards.
Okay.
So then Buddy sells it to another guy on the stock where he puts it into an entire investment portfolio that, it's got some derivatives, but it's also got some oil and gas. It's also got some manufacturing. It's also got some real estate. And he sells that entire chunk for $1,000. And so the individual portion of these mortgages was going higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. So then Buddy down the road, he borrows $100. So, or like he borrows like tens of thousands, but say $125 of that debt is being dedicated to buying this mortgage derivative. Then all of a sudden they default. So the United States government steps in and says, okay, we're going to cover the cost of the mortgage, which was the initial $100.
Yeah.
But the extra $25 of value that I have borrowed money for to cover the cost of that investment, that evaporates. I'm still $25 in the red.
Right.
So the United States covers the $100, but that extra 25 of accumulated value that built up over the last 3 years of trading, that is evaporated.
So-
and now I'm on the hook for it.
If it had stayed with the banks,
If
This
the, if
would
the,
not
if the
have-
derivatives market had never been, have never
Yeah.
come to be, if these things had never been sold as
If it had stayed with the banks. But then on the other hand, I still don't know if the banks would have participated because the banks, so the bank say gives you a $100 mortgage. Yeah, the U.S. government is going to pick up the tab on that $100 when it defaults. But now we get into the opportunity cost. I could, it's going to take me months to get that, say, on the bank of Paddy, or Petty Bank, we'll call it. I make that $100 loan.
sounds risky.
Sounds risky. Sketch. It's so sus. So I make that. I've got this $100 mortgage, and it's paying me, some interest. It's paying me, say 7%, or 7 cents. Every month or whatever it is. Or,
It'd be every month, yeah.
So I'm getting 7 cents a month. So when it goes under, I'm not getting that interest anymore. I'm not getting that 7 cents a month. Now the U.S. government has said to me, "Don't worry, I will cover that." Say
the $100.
The $100. I'm going to get you that money. So okay, that's fine. But it's going to take me 2 months to get that money off of them. It's going to take me at least a certain amount of time because government doesn't move quickly. It's going to take me at least that amount of time. Well, now my loss is 14 cents because I could have loaned that money to somebody else who's not going to default, and then I would have gained my 7 cents a month interest instead of just having it sit and go nowhere. And I'm losing money. Idle money loses money because of the value of inflation. So if it's sitting there doing nothing, I actually lose money. So in terms of opportunity cost, I would have been better off to never issue that loan in the first place, even though the government said, I'll guarantee it. I'm still losing what I could have got. Like I could have got more money elsewhere.
Okay.
So again, fiduciary duty. But then if we say, hey, you can package it up as a derivative and push that risk onto the stock market where they do risk is their business. Say, okay, I'll do that now. I will give that loan because I can get it more quickly off of my books by packaging it up as a derivative and offloading it.
Yeah.
But if I just want to hold on to it, I'm still kind of losing money. It's not that it's not an absolute loss, but it's a loss versus what I could have otherwise done.
But it gets it off your books. Because when the initial
And it
banks
gets it off the books. Okay.
when the banks sell the derivative initially, right? The value of the derivative has to be more than what they're selling it for. Nobody buy it.
Yeah.
Right. So here's $100 million worth of mortgages.
Yep.
We're going to sell it to you for 80.
Yep.
Right.
And
so
there's also
when it gets
the
resold,
assumption
it goes up and up and up
Yeah.
because everybody's selling it out of profit.
Yeah.
So the $100 million of loans, but this stuff is all being sold so quickly. Nobody can research like what the
The other thing is there was also the assumption that these mortgages would be refinanced, that people wouldn't walk away.
Yeah.
That there wouldn't be jingle mail. They say that, okay, if I can't make my monthly payment of $500 or whatever it is, I'm going to refinance so that I simply make a monthly payment of $400 for additional years.
The
and
trigger,
that the overall interest-bearing portion, in other words, the profit to the lender, is increased.
So there was a run on the market.
it wasn't a run on the market. The trigger was that people started defaulting, and the system could only handle a certain rate of defaults, and as soon as it went higher,
Then the domino effect.
This was something that the
Big Short.
The Big Short got right. Okay, that once the default, and the thing was, the guys were thought, well, this default level here is going to trigger it.
Yeah.
And it kept going higher because the government kept subsidizing.
Yes.
And so the default rate would go up and go up.
Kept
and
subsidizing what?
the defaults.
Yeah. Kept bailing out the mortgages.
So what happened is the default rate would climb faster than the government could subsidize or was willing to subsidize, right?
Yeah.
Because even Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae had limits of what they could do.
Yeah, because they have limited annual budgets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So once the default rate, because interest rates had a bit of a rise, and mortgage payments, and the default rates just
It snowballed.
Yeah.
It snowballed.
Okay. So, question.
so that's what caused it.
Yeah.
But
If we're saying it's okay, the banks are looking at this going, okay, well, it's going to take me 2 months to actually get this all sorted out for each individual mortgage, right? Was there anything loaded into the front end of that agreement that said, okay, when you give out one of these mortgages, register it with us so you can get your money right fucking away, right?
Even that 2 months is right effing away.
in the financial world,
Yeah.
well, in the
Government
in the government
does-
world,
in the government world. Government never moves as fast
As an example,
as, say, a voluntary transaction does. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, because the government has to, because it's other people's money.
It's got to do due diligence.
It has to do due diligence.
Okay, so the other question I had is, was there no discussion whatsoever at any level, to any extent, that we are going to guarantee this debt, but you can't do something stupid like
No, there was
Give it
not.
away.
And I know, because I was part of those discussions.
you were part of those
I
discussions?
was there. I was there. No, I couldn't answer that.
Well, I mean,
Answer that.
you guys claim a lot of stuff. Like, there's a lot of...
I'm not aware. I'm not aware of any limits that were placed on that. But I am aware that there was also a lot of social pressure on this.
Yeah.
And again, like, the government was heavily encouraging this.
when things first started, like I would say, there was 3 movies kind of basically about this, came with the immediate aftermath. The first one, I can't remember the title. It was essentially a docudrama, and it followed Hank Paulson, who was the chairman of the Federal Reserve at the time, around. And it basically it followed, and he was played by William Hurt. Yeah.
Great actor.
Yeah, William Hurt. Yeah. Sorry, I thought I was for a second I was mixing it up with John Hurt, but no. Anyway, yeah. So anyway, and then movie goes along and it's just like, and it falls him along, and he's like, "Oh, this bank's going under. Well, we can't bail him out.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's just too much money. They can't bail him out." And the next thing you know, but
too big to fail.
It might do this to the economy, and then do this, and then as the thing moved along, it's like, "Oh, we can't." The initial response was, "This is happening." I'm like, "Well, we can't save it," and then, "Oh, we're going to save it," and then, "Oh, this is going to happen." "Oh, we can't save that. It's too big." "Oh, we
better save it.
Yeah, we have to save. And so they were just kind of. They were caught up in events as well, and they just kind of like...
Yeah.
No, I get that the Fed is not actually a branch of the government.
Yeah, it isn't. It isn't.
Yeah, it is. It's just run at arm's length.
Yeah.
It's the central bank of the United States.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, and maybe I need to go and just read nothing but the Wall Street Journal from that time.
I've got a book I'm going to buy you. I'm going to give you a Christmas gift.
Well, that sounds awfully socialist to me. Make me buy it myself, you fucking red.
Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell.
Well, that's going to be one of them.
No. But
Why is it still being described in terms of saving or bailing out? If the intent from the beginning, like the language to me does not scan here. Mm-hmm. This sounds to me as apologetic for the banks and Wall Street. It's certainly the way this conversation has gone. If not the banks, definitely Wall Street.
I was totally opposed to the bailouts. Totally opposed at the time, and I remain that way now. And we even got caught up at.
Why would
Canada.
you be? Because it was the government's fault. It was all the government's fault.
Yes, but at the same time,
when you create these distortions, sometimes you have to take the pain.
Yes,
right. Like
they get the profit, you assume the risk.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, this is corporatism, and it ended up in corporatism. In massive, the most massive expression of corporatism.
Corporatism in the world
ever seen. Yeah. Right. Like so, where exactly the profit is privatized and the risk is socialized.
Yeah.
Or
exactly. Yeah. So like the risk was transferred
to all
from these corporate entities. Like the public did not get access to the profit. But the public had full responsibility for the risk.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's completely wrong.
Yeah.
But
it's corporatism.
Isn't that the legal agreement that was agreed between the government and the banks in the first place?
Yes. However, when these... Like, again, I don't think we should be bailing out the stock market. Again, like, when the banks said,
once it went from the banks to the
stock market.
To the stock market.
Lehman Brothers should have been allowed... Everybody thought it was going to destroy the entire American economy, which it kind of did anyway, almost. But everybody said it was going to be worse. Yeah. They thought it was going to lead to another Great Depression.
Yeah.
And so they were trying to avert the Great Depression, right? Especially like once, like GM was about to go under.
And that's the Canadian example where Harper ended
Chrysler.
Up bailing out GM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Chrysler as well. In fact, the only one of the big three who didn't take money, and they were offered, was Ford. But Ford didn't.
Yeah, Ford
this
didn't
is
want that.
Ford Canada, GMC Canada, Chrysler Canada.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if Ford Canada was offered any money, but Ford in the States was offered money.
Yeah, and Ford said no.
They didn't. They were fine. And
because there was a huge amount of conditions.
The Ford family still owns a majority of Ford Motor Company.
Right.
So this is where the fiduciary it's in a gray space between the privately held and the publicly held. It's a publicly held company technically, but there's not enough votes by other shareholders.
Majority shareholders can
still. So the Ford family can still protect the CEO if they agree with the CEO, and they can't. The rest of the shareholders can't muster the votes to remove them.
Right.
But so Ford, it's a publicly traded company that kind of behaves like a privately traded company or a privately held company.
Yeah.
Okay, so interesting, very interesting.
So Harper, in the wake of this, created. Have you heard of the bail-in? This is a Canadian regulation that Harper implemented. Your money in the bank, if the bank that your money is in gets in trouble, it is allowed to take its account holders' money and use it to save itself. So I bank with TD. TD gets in financial trouble. They can
They can confiscate your money.
They can confiscate all my money and give it to themselves to keep to pay off debts if they get in trouble.
Temporarily?
Nope.
Your money just disappears.
My money disappears.
As happened in Malta.
So, because you're a customer of the basically what Harbour did is he took the risk and instead taking the
Yep.
he took it from the taxpayer and put it on the bank
yeah.
put it on the bank customers.
Yep.
So
For every bank.
for every bank.
Or at least all of
Okay,
our
so he
like
took it
our
from the
Schedule 4 banks.
He took it from
Like,
the
Well,
That-
the charter banks.
Yeah, the chartered banks.
Yes.
so he took it from the taxpayer and put it back on the taxpayer.
Well, a
In a
limited
different
number.
No, but
a
he limited the
number
pool of taxpayers,
Yeah,
right?
A limited pool of taxpayers.
So if TD goes tits up or is about to go tits up and takes all the money from its
Customers.
from its depositors,
yep.
right? If you bank with RBC, it doesn't matter to you.
Yeah.
Right?
It's not going to affect you.
It doesn't affect you, right?
So,
But it's
so
also-
where's the incentive for TD to regulate itself?
I would say the incentive is
Well, if they do that, it's the end of their bank.
yeah, it's the end of their bank.
Right.
Whereas if you
Well,
distribute
they've just saved themselves.
if you distribute the risk, then there is less of a deterrent to that risk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Now there is in Canada we have a lot of different rules from the United States. The banks can't run nearly as leveraged in Canada as they can in the U.S. So the rules governing the actual laws governing them essentially make it so it's almost impossible for a Canadian bank to get in that kind of financial trouble. But
Yeah. But also let's
But,
say
yeah,
let's say TD goes under and the taxpayer bails out TD. Well, then RBC can say, you know what, it's okay if we engage in risky behavior because if they bail out TD, they kind of have to bail us out.
yeah.
So, but if there isn't that backstop of the taxpayer, if they say, okay, no, TD, if you get in trouble, the only place you can go is to your customers. And then what do you think happens to TD at that point?
Okay,
No,
so
like if you had $10,000 in an account with TD and TD seized it because they were facing bankruptcy, you would never bank with them again.
Yeah.
I would never bank with TD because like my buddy
Right.
Trent just had $10,000.
So what's the point? What is the point in the government allowing that? I get that the government is saying, okay,
Because then-
hang on,
okay.
the taxpayers
Yeah.
aren't going to be on the hook for this,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's anyone who's got their money in Bank X.
Yeah.
If it goes under.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And the bank's going to take it and it's going to survive for 30 seconds.
Basically, the bank
then-
closed down with no debt or something.
Yeah,
Or-
it protects the broader economic system because then all of the people that it's not going to create a domino effect.
Yeah.
In that it's not going to cause default upon default upon default upon default upon default and then spread wider and wider and wider throughout the economy. For example, as it started in the United States and the dominoes fell all the way into Iceland. So it would be, okay, it's going to be one domino falls. TD goes down, all of the creditors or
TD
all
goes
of the
down, but it's
all
paid
the investors.
it's paid all
Yeah.
its creditors.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
At
seizes
the
money.
expense
of its depositors.
of its depositors.
Yeah.
So it just limits the number of dominoes that can fall. And then, of course, it means that everybody within TD themselves, on a personal level, are absolutely wrecked because no bank is ever going to, no bank will ever hire them again. Their own personal reputations are absolutely, completely destroyed.
What's the value of the shares to the shareholders?
Within TD in that situation?
Yeah.
Or do you mean in a more generic sense? I'm not
When-
sure I
when this
understand your
happens-
question.
When this happens, do the shareholders still get value for their money?
No, probably not.
No,
They're-
no. The share would be of zero value because
the share
TD
would
would
be
no
of zero
longer
value.
would no longer exist. So if I had in a separate thing, let's say I'm not a depositor with TD, I simply bought a share for $1.
your $1 would be lost.
My $1 would be
The
nothing.
the best you could hope would be to claim the value at the point of that it collapsed. You would be able to claim that if you own, say, $1,000 of shares, you could claim that on a tax return as a capital loss.
Yeah, that'd be about the best I could do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So which would, the best you could hope to do is take a cut on your income taxes because the capital loss
Yeah.
you suffered on.
Which I don't think you should be allowed to do either.
Interesting.
Yeah.
If I had my way, we would take the tax code from 245 pages to 6.
Sure.
There's 99% of all tax write-offs I would not allow.
You know how big the tax code in the United States?
Oh, it's like the phone book. It's crazy.
It's bigger than the phone.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's like 40,000 pages or something.
Yeah.
like that.
Doesn't it change from year to year?
a little bit. Change it all the time, yeah.
Yeah, it's constantly in flux.
Yeah.
But I think that's intentional, and I think that's bad governance. Incredibly
Well,
bad
and even
governance.
Harper did that too, right? Like
Yep.
he was big one with the tax credits, right? Tax credit for this,
Yep.
tax credit for the home
Yeah,
improvement tax
yeah,
credit,
yeah.
and this tax credit and that tax credit. Yeah, it's
because he lacked the moral courage to say, "Hey, let's just eliminate that tax altogether."
yeah.
He lacked the moral courage to do what he should have doctrinally done. And that's my biggest criticism of Harper. That he was conservative, but he wasn't conservative enough. He wasn't the conservative we needed. He was conservative light. My big criticism of too many conservative parties across the English-speaking world is that there are nothing more than progressives who drive the speed limit.
Yeah.
Like progressives advance the progressive agenda, whereas conservatives simply stop that agenda. They don't roll it back. They just stop it where it is until the next progressive government gets in and then advances it even further. It's like, I wish to God conservatives had just half the moral courage and conviction that the left does.
But Harper is a big government guy.
That's
I know. Where have you
so-
been in the last 5 years, man? I mean, like,
That's like what? Oh no, hang on. Let's save that for the next episode.
But Harper is fundamentally a big government guy,
Yeah,
right? Like
man, he was.
he went on just after like he left government. He actually went on Dave Rubin for some reason, and so he was describing his view of Canadian conservatism, and it was like, I don't believe in almost any of this. Like,
Yeah.
he believed in like lower taxes, but he believed in a strong and
Yeah.
like big, strong, and,
Yeah,
and
he-
powerful
he
government.
was-
and it was just like,
Yeah.
nope, I don't
Yeah,
agree with almost any
he
of
was
it.
he was not the conservative. Like, okay, he was better than what we had. Okay, he was better than the Chrétien Martin liberals. Okay,
Yeah.
marginally, and okay, he was way better than Chrétien. He was marginally better than Martin.
Yeah,
Martin was, for a liberal, he was very fiscally responsible.
yeah,
yeah, but I
absolutely
mean, he was a finance minister, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to be fair, like to be fair, to be candid, he was forced to be fiscally responsible by the absolute economic incompetence of the Liberal prime ministers who preceded him,
yeah.
going all the way back to Trudeau Sr.
Yeah.
So
and
maybe-
the views of the social views of the time of that you had to. It was generally even at that point considered, you had to manage your debt.
Yeah, well,
Versus-
because we
it was
were up
pre-modern
against
monetary theory, I guess.
we were up against the fiscal wall.
Yeah.
Right? Like we had been so badly managed
Yeah.
in comparison to the rest of our neighbors that the international money markets were about to destroy our currency.
Yeah.
So he had to do something.
And Trudeau's blown right through it.
Right. Oh, well, again, the benefit that was made during, like, say, the Martin Harper years,
Yeah.
we're kind of back where we were in, say, 60, 69, 70, or 67, 68.
Yeah.
When Trudeau the Elder took over, we're kind of in the same situation now that we were.
Yeah.
Like the economic record of both Trudeaus parallels very, very closely.
Friend of mine told me a story that kind of puts it in microcosm. He knew a guy owned an Esso here in the park. It might be the one just over across from the county hall.
Yeah.
Right. Now, at the time, this guy, when he started this gas station in like late 1950s, early 1960s.
Oh, going way back.
Yeah. So then the oil companies, you paid them. The retailers paid the oil companies monthly. Okay.
Like a franchise fee.
But also the money for the fuel,
Oh, okay.
right?
You were like net 30.
Yeah, they were on basically net 30. Now they're on net 7.
No, wow.
Yeah. So this guy was like, okay, responsible because he ran one of the first and he runs one of the busiest gas stations. So he's big money, right? And of course,
Yeah.
banks pay interest on the balance at the end of the month. So he made a killing on interest. So even after in the early 1980s,
So he's paying net 30 to IOL,
to IOL, yeah,
and he's paying
getting
interest monthly.
No, he's getting interest.
Okay, so his deposits
Are earning interest, right?
Right, okay.
Right. So in the early 80s,
Also, the bank pays interest every 30 days, but it's accruing every day.
yeah, well, but
Right.
no, the interest for the month is calculated on the balance at the end of the month.
Oh, okay. So he would wait till his interest payment came in, then he would.
Well,
pay
he didn't. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, but IOL went to and all the oil companies went to net 7 in the early 80s, but he
Right.
was on net 30.
He was still grandfathered?
He was
or what?
grandfathered
Okay.
to net 30, right? So he's been making all this money, and he's making every month 25, because he's doing $250,000 a month in business.
Right.
So he's getting $10,000 to $20,000 a month in interest.
Right.
So he's not spending. He's a smart guy and he's saving,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So he saves it, and eventually he dies in
Yeah.
the late 90s, right?
Yeah.
And he's still on net 30.
Like his business,
The business
the
is still
corporation is still on net 30.
Is still on net 30. All the other retailers around him, gas
Net
retailers,
7.
are on net 7.
Yeah.
So he's making money. It's a great money making enterprise for him. It's
Yeah.
not a great money making enterprise because the profit on gasoline is
Yeah.
like a couple cents to the retailer is like a cent to a couple cents a liter. It's
Yeah,
not
you got to
high.
sell volume.
Yeah, it's not high. So he's doing this. He's making money. And he's saving it. He just spends it. He makes sure because he knows the second he misses a payment
That's
to
right.
IOL, he's on net 7.
Yeah, he's on net 7,
And his money train is gone, right?
Yeah.
His cash cow is dead.
Yeah.
So he's good, disciplined, and he pays, and he does it. And,
Well,
and he's got
his heir, anyway. You said the dude died in the 90s?
yeah, his heirs, his kids take over.
Yeah.
They see this bank account with millions of bucks in it.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
And they blew it.
They blew it, and they defaulted within a year. They defaulted, and we're on net 7.
And that's 7 again.
Right? And
Well, they did it themselves.
right?
Too bad. Too bad, so sad.
Because it was literally like when we explained to me how this worked, how they went from net 30, because you just start thinking of the amount of money that goes through.
Yeah.
And since your interest is calculated at the end of the month,
Yeah.
on the balance at the end of the month, right before you pay us off.
Right before he pays. Yeah.
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 Bang. Because the payment is probably due on the 1st, right? But
Yeah,
the money
yeah.
interest is calculated on the 30th and 31st, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so he makes the payment on the 1st. There it goes. But the interest,
Yep. Oh, well. Well, screw them.
right? But it's just what governments do too, right? It's the same kind of thing. It's just in microcosm.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right? Like-
yeah.
Because we had a surplus, right? Harper ran a surplus those
Yeah.
last couple of years, right?
Yeah.
We had like a $12 billion surplus when Trudeau took over, and bang, it was instantly gone.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of questions. I want to ask both.
Okay. 42.
Going back to 2009.
Is that the meaning of life?
Something
It's the answer to the
Oh,
meaning.
Yeah, something like that.
Or the answer to what is the meaning of life?
Yeah.
Yeah. Life. What is the answer to life? Life, the universe, and everything.
Yeah, like the universe and everything. Should be required reading in all of our school curriculums.
Oh, fuck.
Anyway, go on.
So first of all, after all the what we're calling bailouts, all the boardrooms giving themselves massive bonuses from
Yep.
those bailouts. How do we feel? How do we feel about those as
Right?
free market?
Like Jamie Dimon, who ran Goldman Sachs, gave himself a huge bonus
Yep.
the year they got bailed out.
Yep.
He was pilloried in public. I mean, heck, if I could have thrown him in jail, I would have. But
Yeah. Well, I'm on the one hand, like I'm opposed to the bailout.
Yeah.
Okay. Like again, I don't think the government should be. I don't believe in too big to fail, and I don't think the government should be. I don't think the taxpayer should be on the hook for other people's bad decisions.
right.
Now, once that is said, the government gave that money to the corporation. The corporation can do with it whatever the hell they want. At that point,
Yeah, it wasn't illegal.
yeah, like it wasn't illegal what he did.
It was reprehensible, but it was not illegal.
Like it bugs me because I don't think we should be giving money to corporations, even if they did really good things with it. Okay, like let's say they did really good things with it, and they gave they gave their CEOs a 10% pay cut, or like say they gave their board of directors a 10% pay cut, and gave every single worker a $5,000 raise or a $5,000 bonus, whatever it was. If they used the money that way, I would still be opposed to it. Government should not be giving them money, because once you do give them money, they're going to do with it whatever they're going to do with it. And that's, to me, goes back to the idea of individual agency. People should be allowed to run their companies as they wish to run their companies. They should be allowed to make whatever internal dealings they wish to make. They should be allowed to set their salaries however they wish to set them. So when you give them money, then give them free money. He's going to say, well, I want to give myself a raise.
Yeah, I'm going to circle back to that one in a sec. I kind of suspect I know how this is going to go. You're saying The Big Short was actually about the 2009 crisis, right?
Well, that's when it happened. I think it goes way back to the 1960s.
No, I get it. But the
Yeah.
movie, The Big Short.
The movie is about that.
Yeah.
Is about
So,
the
because the other one that
crisis.
comes up for me is
There was another one, which is interesting as a as an examination of what happened inside the banks, the investment banks, and how. And that movie is called Margin Call, and that's Jeremy Irons and.
I haven't seen that. Is it good?
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jeremy Irons plays the bank CEO.
He's like another good actor.
Bruce Willis's ex. What's her name? Demi Moore.
Demi Moore.
She's in it as an executive.
So, is Jeremy Irons a bad guy in this movie?
He's morally ambiguous. Is the best I
Okay,
can say
'cause,
for him.
man,
Probably
he
is.
is.
he doesn't play good guys well.
Oh,
anyways.
but he is one of the best bad guys you've ever
Yeah.
seen. Oh, he
Exactly.
can just make your blood run cold. That guy.
He, if there's a villain, he's the villain.
He's.
But the villain is kind of more the situation, and so
okay.
the main characters are like Zachary Quinto and Paul.
Stand. Neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a good film.
But
Okay.
yeah, it's good film, and it's kind of like what examines. It's like what happened inside the banks when they realized the jig was up, right? And so
that the dominoes were falling.
yeah. And so what happens is, like in the movie, they don't say which bank it is. It's a fictional bank.
Yeah.
But in the movie, they're like, "Oh shit, this
Yeah.
is happening."
Yeah.
So what they do is they just fucking unload they bundle all their shit
Yep.
with some good stuff, and they get it out the fucking door.
And
they're
just sell
literally
it. Just get it off their books.
and they're literally and it has to be off the books today.
Yeah.
And by the close of business today, all the other people that we just sold this shit to are going to realize what we've done, and so none of them are going to do business with anybody
Ever again.
So,
Yeah.
so they go to the guys on the trading floor. Look, you're going to be this bank is
Yeah.
about to go tits up. You're going to be unemployed at the end of the day, regardless.
Yeah.
So the more you get off the books, so they paid like all their traders, like you're going to get $3 million at the end of today.
Yeah.
And you're going to be without a job, and you're going to be toxic. So here's
and
like,
you will probably never work in this industry again.
Yeah, so here's-
but you're getting $3 million.
yeah. So, but at the end of the movie, like the bank survives, but it
And
does
this-
all this shit. But all
and
the
this
trading
is-
floor is completely
and this
gutted.
is a bank.
Yeah, it's an investment bank.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, not. So it's worth watching. It's because it's a good examination of like what happened inside the bank. You know, like
So
the
tell
three
me-
movies: the one about Hank Paulson, The Big Short, and Margin Call. They're all they're all good illustrations of different aspects of the crisis.
So in this case, tell me again how the capitalists self-regulate and they shouldn't be told what to do or how to do anything. Or
Well, because
if they're doing shit like that.
Okay.
at the beginning,
Yep.
right? If we hadn't subsidized the mortgages in the first place and created the incentive structure for a bank
In
to
other
make
words,
loans it didn't think would get paid back,
had we not taken away the self-regulation of the free market,
That's the thing.
none of this would have happened. Number two, we again took away the self-regulation of the market when we bailed out these firms from making their bad decisions.
the listeners can't hear, but Trent's going to have to pick up his eyes because they just rolled out of his head.
yes.
Yes, that sound you heard.
Yes. Because again, this
I need a sound effect for that.
is my kind of version of playing chess with the devil. And that
I need
when
to
the
oil these
economy
things.
goes tits up, it's a failure of market capitalism. Okay, well, where was the market capitalism here? In a
Yeah.
completely government-created situation or a corporate situation, where was the market capitalism?
Well, okay, this
So
is
when
another-
government fails, it's market capitalism that fails. When capitalism fails, it's still market capitalism that fails.
I find it's the
There's
other way
never
around.
there's never a failure of government. in
I
here.
find it's the other way around. Right? There was another text.
Yeah, no, that's
exchange
what I
we
mean.
had.
Like nothing is ever, government is never the cause of anything bad. It's always market capitalism. Even though there's no market in there. It's completely
this is what I-
corporatist system.
This is why I hear from conservatives every election cycle, like every election cycle, right? Is, Biden's economic record sucked, right? Well, they don't say Biden every cycle, but in this case, Biden's economic record
The progressive government's economic record sucks.
sucked.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. And mysteriously, every time it's Republican president, theirs didn't suck.
No,
And again,
some of them sucked.
Yeah.
Some of them sucked. Especially like especially if, let's broaden your term to conservative governments. A lot of their records suck. Like Grant Devine, one of the worst conservative economic managers in human history. Sorry, but go on.
It's like, he took over in 2021. Like, and I find this on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
Right? No matter what country we're talking about, right? Like, no one's ever looking at this objectively and going, okay, here's what actually happened. Mm-hmm. Right? I'm looking at Biden.
Yep.
There's a lot of apologists for freaking Trump, right? Mm-hmm. I find actually it's one of the unique aspects.
Trump is not economic. Well, Trump's not conservative, period. But Trump's not economically conservative.
No, he's not conservative.
But there's plenty of people looking at him and they're going, not just him talking about his record, right? So, and we're talking Biden here. So there's a lot of people.
Like you're comparing, say, the Biden administration to the first Trump administration?
Yeah.
I would say that Trump in 2016, 2020 did have better, and I think there's plenty of indicators out there for this, plenty of metrics for it. His economic performance was better than the two Obama administrations that preceded him, definitely better than Obama, and better than Biden.
Now, there's a caveat there. Trump, at the very end of his presidency, of his first administration, created the seeds for his own destruction, but didn't have to suffer the consequences of it because it happened right at the end. He dumped a shit ton of money into the economy, and that was going to create inflation.
Yes.
But Biden went and doubled down and put about 3 times as much in.
Yes.
Right.
They both had, it was a bad policy by both administrations, just that Biden doubled down on it.
Yeah. Oh, and Trump didn't have to wear it because it happened right at the end of his term.
Because Biden was still running around the chairs when the music stopped.
Yeah.
Trump wasn't on the floor.
No.
Yeah.
He was out of the game.
Trump's biggest problem for me is that he never cut spending.
No.
He understood the need for tax cuts.
Yeah.
He understood the need for deregulation.
Yep.
But he did not have the moral courage to cut spending.
You'd have to have morals first.
Yeah, fair enough.
Right? Like,
fair enough.
Moral courage, I think moral.
Fair enough.
The reason I bring up, Biden inherited not just that, right? But the other aspect, I find it uniquely fascinating.
I just want to say Biden's mistake was doubling down on the Trump strategy.
But the other thing that came out, and again, I find this
and the COVID weakness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's COVID, right? All the COVID policies, especially in this province, in this country, anyone who criticizes COVID policy is criticizing Trudeau and the left, right? Where it belongs, right? Because they're the ones implementing all of the policies. Virtually those same policies were implemented in the U.S. With the same impact on their economy, but more so because it's the American economy under Trump. And so that's a lot of there was a lot of people staying home and staying home.
Yeah, but there was a lot of variation from state to state that you didn't have anywhere else in the world.
But Trump was saying all these things. Stay home, wear masks, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
Right? So...
Yeah, where Trump was at odds with his people is Trump was always like, well, this is going to be done in 2 weeks. This is going to be done in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And the entire medical establishment was like,
whereas
when is it going to be done?
CDC and Fauci were saying, no, this is going to go on for years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Trump was like, there was never, like when Trump implemented, he said, no, we're going to do this for like a couple of weeks, maybe a month.
Yeah.
Whereas the entire, how would you say, like the administrative bureaucracy, the administrative state was saying, no, this is going to go on indefinitely.
Yeah.
So there was a difference there. The other thing is, like I will agree with you in that conservative governments, like say Kenya and Alberta, did implement very similar policies to say the NDP in British Columbia. I would say though that they did so in good faith because they were acting on the sincere advice of the administrative.
I'm not debating any of that. I'm not even debating that for Trump. Again, I'm just fast forwarding to, okay, now we're looking at Biden's economic record.
Yeah.
Biden inherited the results of whatever lockdowns occurred in the U.S. Under Trump.
Yep.
Right? So that's, again, the other thing about the first Trump administration is, to my recollection, the only thing he did from an economic point of view, and in fact, the only piece of legislation I can remember him doing was the tax cuts, which, of course, from the mainstream media left point of view, it's
a bad idea.
But
it's a break for all his rich buddies.
Oh,
right?
Well, yeah, okay.
Right?
But he also renegotiated NAFTA,
Yep.
right?
He did do that. And he did a lot of deregulation.
To the benefit of the United States,
Yep.
and to the benefit of a lot of people, like
A lot of Americans.
a lot of working class people,
Yep.
even in the United States,
Yep.
right? So, and he threatened his running around saying tariffs is a great word, and I love him. You know, that brought a lot of people to the table, and he was able to
Yep.
renegotiate a lot of stuff.
He renegotiated deals with Japan as well.
Yep.
Like NAFTA, Japan. I think he also renegotiated a deal with India as well, didn't he?
I think so. He tried to do it with China. I don't know if that ever worked.
I don't know if that ever worked, but he certainly got the Chinese attention.
Yeah.
He did do a lot of policies that did return a lot of manufacturing back to the United States.
Yeah.
And he also created conditions that allowed it to come back to the United States, and that's what I mean by a lot of deregulation. He streamlined or eliminated regulations that made manufacturing in the United States more expensive,
Yeah.
so that it was worthwhile to offshore.
And he issued this actually an unmitigated good, I think, or maybe it's too generous, but he made an executive order that said that when you're interpreting laws and creating regulations to interpret laws, going forward, if you're making a new regulation, you have to get rid of two.
Yes.
So it incentivized or forced
The red tape rule. Yeah.
Yeah, it forced government departments to figure out what they really prioritize,
really
what
streamline.
they wanted to enforce or what they wanted to collect revenue on.
So he did increase, and this was one of the reasons why I think he had such a bump in minority representation, in that there was a significant increase in employment at the bottom of the income ladder under the Trump administration, which was overly represented in visible minorities, in that he was definitely an economic boon to them. In response to your question about, or to your statement that Biden kind of inherited the bad situation of COVID, I will also give you two other examples. 2016, the NDP government, as soon as they took office, they inherited a crash in world oil price. The Obama administration inherited the
2009.
the crash.
Yeah, he took over right after. Right
After.
Yeah.
Bush was a lame duck. Well,
Bush was a lame duck when it happened, and Bush started the bailouts.
Yeah.
How long, given those three as context, how long is a government allowed to blame their situation on their predecessor?
And that's just it. I don't trust. I'll almost say I don't trust the input of information anymore for even us to have an objective conversation about it. You know, I feel it's because no one. Oh crap! No one was having an objective conversation. Everyone's always
Can I add, before you go on any further, before you flesh out that point, can I add one more to that context?
Yeah.
In addition to the three, how long will Poilievre be able to blame Trudeau?
Oh, forever.
You think?
Oh, fuck.
No. I don't. I'm not asking you how long he will. I'm asking you, how much leash do you give him? How long? Will Trent give Pierre before you say, okay, fine, Pierre, you got to start moving the needle here. I understand you inherited a dog's breakfast. No. How long do you give him before you say, okay, you got to start making things better?
That is such a tough question.
Yeah.
I don't even know.
Steve, how long do you give him?
Well, hang on. It's just Trudeau the younger. Like when we first started this, doing this, 2 years ago?
Oh my God.
Like I started calling Trudeau kind of Trump left, right? Without realizing the magnitude to
There's
which
a lot of
that was
parallels.
going. Like just
a lot of parallels.
Yeah.
Just how polarizing and obfuscating he has become. There is no way of knowing. Like I said, like I've been
And they're very
shocked.
similar personalities.
I've been shocked in the last 6 months just to realize again how big the civil service has gotten under Trudeau, like record levels. Like, what is he thinking?
Yeah.
Type of stuff, right?
I think there is a logic to it. I think it's a poor logic, but I think there's a method to his madness.
Well, I mean, this is the token left. This is the group saying, and I'm stunned. I'm astounded. I'm flabbergasted. Like, holy shit! And then you get Canada Post going on strike, and they're waving at me, expect me in a honk, and I'm like,
Nurses went out same time.
Yeah.
Railroad's talking about going out again.
That strike did not go well for Canada Post or for Cup W, did it?
Or
It did
for
not
for
go
Cup
well.
W, I'm like,
Yeah,
dude,
that was a
you
disaster.
guys are losing billions of dollars every year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, they went on strike, and probably 60% of the population didn't even notice.
Well, that's just it,
Well,
right?
yeah, that's the other, and which is the reason they're losing billions of dollars every year. It's like you guys are so out of date.
Yeah.
Like, something's got to change, and it ain't going to be pay raises for all of you.
Well, they
Yeah.
they came back, and I didn't even hear that they got legislated back. I'm just like, oh, there's a Canada Post van. They must be back to work. So then I go and check my mailbox.
Yeah.
Flyers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Like, there's flyers. Not
I
even
got,
bills.
I was waiting for a couple of bills.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for one eBay purchase that was already late
Yeah.
when they went on strike.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know if I'm ever going to get it.
Yeah. That's like me and my firearms license.
Yeah. So there was 2 bills. I've since gotten those bills.
Yeah.
So I'm okay there
Yeah.
because my account was overdue, for a couple of my utilities. I still haven't received that eBay package. I don't know if I ever will.
Yeah.
I think that might just go into the great gaping maw of Canada Post and might be a loss for me. But yeah, it was not good for Cup W because, it's the classic move, right? You go on strike right before the Christmas season.
Yeah.
So then people aren't getting their gifts. And so then you use that public anger to leverage the government to give you what you want. But that public anger simply, there was a bit of it.
The gifts thing has largely been replaced by Amazon.
Exactly.
Right? Like,
Amazon and courier services.
and courier
private
service.
post.
But for the most part, it's people who's like, I'm not buying this and then sending it to you in the post office. I'm buying it as a gift on Amazon, having Amazon give it to you directly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And so it really showed, it kind of showed the entire country that we could get rid of Canada Post completely.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't bother anyone.
Yeah, right. Like even I don't know why. Like my gas provider said, okay, well, automatically we're switching you to electronic billing,
Yeah.
so we're just going to email you.
Yeah.
Epcor didn't. I don't know
Epcor
why.
didn't.
So I just during that month they're off. I'm like, it's usually like $80, so I'll just send them $100 and be done with it. And then when I finally
And
get
you'll
a
have a
bill,
credit for next
and I'll have a
month,
credit for the
yeah.
next month, right?
Yeah.
Same gas bill.
Yeah.
Gas has gone up, but this time it's probably going to be $200. And now, actually, I figured I probably wasn't going to pay enough, and I'd probably
So you so you get a credit next month, yeah.
Yeah,
But again, it showed, it revealed to the entire population that Canada Post is we can live without it.
Yeah.
And that had been Cup W's angle
Yeah.
from its creation, is that Canada Post is an essential service.
Yeah.
You have to give us extra money.
Yeah.
And
They
now,
don't. They need to grasp just how much of an irrelevancy they are.
Canada should not be the first post-national nation, but it should be the first post office
actually, it is not. Germany's Deutsche Post is completely privatized and run by DHL.
nation. Well, no, it owns DHL.
And but it's completely private. Entity.
Yeah, it's been completely privatized.
The Royal Mail no longer has a monopoly on post. UK Mail, which is operated by DHL, has the authority to compete head to head with the Royal Mail.
Well, but it's 2 different entities now.
2 different entities.
Yeah.
But the point is that
Because Royal Mail,
nobody but Canada Post is allowed to carry the post. In other words, stamped correspondence.
just the Royal.
Whereas UK Mail is allowed to do that.
Yeah, Royal Mail is very confusing now because I was reading about the post office scandal in the UK, and that's a very confusing thing. But now
I'm not tracking. What is that?
Oh, so there was a big scandal. So when the post office was split into UK Post and Royal Mail, and Royal Mail, as far as I can tell, only handles transportation. So the UK Post was they would sell
Yeah.
like franchises basically, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like we go to Shoppers Drug Mart here.
Yeah.
So they're selling them to private people. So these
Yeah.
people would have, pharmacists, and they'd open up a post office in their
Yeah.
in their pharmacy, right? There was a computer system
Mm-hmm.
that was imposed on them by UK Post,
Okay.
and it was massively flawed, and it was shit. It was
Yeah,
all
yeah.
buggy and shit, right?
Yeah.
But the thing was, is this computer system was responsible for counting,
Oh,
and so
bunch of money disappeared.
a bunch of money disappeared, and every time money disappeared, UK Post would go after the franchisee. And so they went after these franchises, and they lift money out of these franchisees, and then eventually somebody then they'd ruin these people.
Yeah.
So they go after
bankrupt them. Yeah.
They bankrupt them and take their business or whatever.
So not only does the little post office close, but the little drugstore, the
drugstore that it was-
also closes.
yeah, and all this stuff, right?
So now you're having a ripple effect in your communities.
yeah. So
And then
eventually,
it turns out
it was the software problem.
Yeah.
It was literally the software was making errors and calling
Yeah.
it, and then so the liability was literally UK Post, and they were
Right.
taking it off the franchisees,
Right.
And it became a massive. And they knew this.
Oh.
The thing was, the scandal part is that UK Post knew
that they were stealing money.
essentially, yeah, and that they were stealing. And
So
yeah.
is someone going to jail or what?
No, a bunch of people lost their money, or lost their jobs. No, sorry,
Should be going to jail.
they should be going to jail.
If you steal from somebody,
But you're talking about
should
people
go to
in a
jail.
quasi government outfit in the UK. So like you think
So it's-
you think there's going to be accountability there?
Yeah, if they're
Right?
if they're quasi government, yeah, there's no accountability.
Right. So it's you should the post office scandal. It's an interesting Wikipedia read. It's but yeah,
I will check that out. But at any rate, so we were talking about.
we were talking about all sorts of. I mean, we're gonna have to wind down here shortly.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
good.
I
how long
want to
how
ask
long-
Steve. I want to ask Steve.
How long does Polyev do?
How long?
Who
Yeah.
knows?
How much leash do you give Polyev?
that's a tough one. And I think I personally probably give Polyev a lot more leash than maybe the public as a whole does. I think the public as a whole maybe gives him a term, right?
I think that might be the case actually.
Yeah.
When you look at what happened
I
with
think he's got
Notley, when Notley came in. Sorry to interrupt, Steve.
That's all right.
When Notley came in, I thought like that very day, like don't get carried away with yourselves here. You benefited from a split on the right and discontent.
Yeah. Like a protest vote.
And this is going to be a one-term government.
Well, you're right on that part.
Yeah.
And well, for that reason.
Yeah.
And I think that's the danger Poilievre is going to run into.
I agree.
is
100%.
that he's going to come in and he'll have.
Yep. The people aren't voting conservative in Eastern Canada. They're voting anti-liberal.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the case.
Yeah.
I mean, listening to Jonah Goldberg all the time, that's one of the things that's been pointed out in his program is that democracy is not a way of hiring somebody; it's a way of firing somebody.
Yes.
Right. It's a way of firing
Yeah.
a government.
Yeah.
That's what democracy fundamentally is.
Yeah.
Because prior to democracy, you couldn't fire the king.
Yeah.
So it's democracy fundamentally is a way to get rid of
To fire somebody.
to fire somebody, not
hire.
not hiring. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, we do hire them still.
Yeah, but
we
by
hire-
default. By default. Not
but
by
essentially
design.
by default, right?
Yeah.
Like you're voting.
How many people do you know, honestly?
But
what percentage of the people do you know actually vote for a candidate as compared to voting against another?
Right. Well, and your point is, I think it is true to your point. Like the people in Ontario are voting against Trudeau.
Yeah. They're not voting for, I mean, certain sectors are, large numbers of sectors are, but I would say to you that everyone who is voting for Trudeau doesn't like Trudeau. They just say, look, I'm really
you mean doesn't
opposed
like
to a
Poilievre?
conservative government.
You mean doesn't?
Not Poilievre. They don't care who the leader is.
I think
they see a conservative government as an inherently negative thing, and that they say, you know what, I will vote for Trudeau with warts and all because I really don't want a conservative government.
I don't know. I'm looking at.
Like
I think what the Tories have been through, because
I don't know a single Liberal voter who would say I would vote for the Conservatives if it wasn't Poilievre.
who was
Not
before
one.
Poilievre was Aaron O'Toole.
Yep.
Before that, there was someone else.
Andrew who?
And yes, thank you,
Andrew?
and Andrew who? Yeah, Andrew Scheer.
Yeah.
but I
Andrew
can never
Scheer, that's
remember his
right.
name. Yeah, Andrew who? That's a good one. That's very accurate, actually.
So
Yeah.
you had a couple of milk toasts.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then now you got Poilievre, who's the exact opposite.
Bit of a
opposite of that.
firebrand.
And
Yep.
so I think I think people are looking at him. So on the first hand, on the one hand, people hadn't had enough time to be completely disgusted with Trudeau the Younger.
Yeah.
And they had these two wishy-washy guys he was running up against anyways.
Yeah.
Now, again, it's the other way around. I think, okay, now everyone's disgusted with Trudeau. But anyone who has distaste for voting for Poilievre, I think a lot of that's going to be personal because he is the opposite.
He's a firebrand.
Right.
Now, that said,
now-
in Westminster parliamentary systems, conservatives tend to do better with firebrands.
Yeah.
Moderate conservatives do not succeed in Westminster parliamentary systems.
In his
Overall, in trend.
He just did. I highly recommend his Poilievre's recent interview with Jordan Peterson.
Yeah. I've been meaning to watch it. Just I haven't.
It's interesting. It's worthwhile. It's created a little bit of hubbub on the left too. I saw Brian Lilly had a post up on YouTube. Yeah. But anyway, one of the things he says in that, which I'm like, well, there's a place I fundamentally agree with you or disagree with Pierre Poilievre. He thinks the Westminster system is the best best system, democratic system. And I am.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I think the American
I think the
Republican
American
structure
system is way better than ours.
is superior to ours.
I
won't say it's perfect, but I think it's superior to ours.
I want to learn a little bit more about the Australian system.
Yeah.
Like what has been called Washminster.
Yeah.
Where it's kind of a combination of the two, but I don't know any details.
Yeah.
I would like to at least learn a bit about it.
In the back of my mind, just over the last 30 years, every once in a while I hear, Australia's going to be a republic. Australia's going to be a republic. Did they ever do that?
Nope.
Not
So
yet.
there's still a dominion.
Because
I
don't know if
thing is,
they ever had dominion status, but they still have the queen.
Well, they're still
or the king.
yeah.
Sorry, as official head of state.
Yeah, it's still their head of state,
They're still a constitutional monarchy.
Okay.
Yeah. And the same. I think it's the same way. My understanding is that the Australians hear the same shit about us. Canada's going to dump the monarchy, and Quebec hates it, and the Australians, the Canadians getting rid of the monarchy. Maybe we should too. And, that it bounces around the three, main Commonwealth, like English, Anglo Commonwealth countries.
The biggest fundamental difference between Australia and us is Australia doesn't have this, like Tasmania isn't saying, we should be our own country, right?
Right.
Like,
they
don't have the separatist.
Yeah. They're.
But they have
the
like
definitive nature of Canadian politics is the legitimacy of the state.
Yeah.
Whereas you don't have that in Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they still have. Well,
they're starting to.
The Aboriginal.
With settler colonialism, they're starting to question the legitimacy of their own states.
Their Aboriginal issues look very much like our First Nation issues, from what I've been able to see.
Which is why I want to do a settler colonialism episode with you guys. Anyway,
that's not what you called it. You weren't calling it settler colonialism. You're like,
I forgot the name.
Yeah,
I was texting in the heat of the moment
because maybe I would have picked that
a bit
instead.
Distracted. Yeah, but there's a lot of background reading you guys got to do on that, man.
We're not reading. You're reading, and we're fucking reacting.
Well, I send it to you. Oh, okay, I guess. Okay, fair enough.
Apparently, you're buying me books. So.
I'm buying you 2 other books. Yeah, that's right.
Maybe I'll read.
Maybe I'll buy you a 3rd. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, go on.
Well, I don't think I had any left.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, just I disagree with Paul on them.
About Westminster.
Yeah.
I gave him 365 days from his first budget.
Yeah.
If you're not
pass a budget,
I'm not asking him to fix everything in that time period. I'm saying you got to move the needle.
Yeah.
You must show demonstrative improvement. You got, 1 year, like your first budget, okay, until that budget, you blame everything you want on Trudeau because you're really, he's still driving the car, right? Yeah. His policies are in place. You issue your budget, your finance minister buys a pair of shoes. From then on, you are calling the shots. So I give you 1 year. 1 year. That's plenty of time.
Yeah.
Like when I start a new job, I got 90 days to start moving the needle. Otherwise, my employer lets me go.
You're done.
Yeah, exactly. So giving him 365, I think that's more than enough.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You got to start improving
That's
stuff.
more than enough time to prove that he's more than just...
Yeah.
I can't do anything, because everything's so bad. Yeah. And like, he's going to probably get if Singh can be taken at his word, we're probably going to see an election late February, mid-March.
Poilievre was saying he can't see it even if Singh does it the first, he literally said that in his interview, there will not be an election. He can't foresee one before March.
Yeah, I can't see before March. But I think the optimal time for the Liberal Democrats is mid-March. Because you're still going to have somewhat inclement weather.
Yeah.
And that will hopefully, like I'm speaking as if I was a strategist for Lib Dems, low turnouts tend to favor incumbents.
Yeah, they're not going to get a low turnout this time.
Well, yeah, but you're going to get lower than if you had it in July.
But yeah, it's not going to
Right? So you're minimizing the damage. If you're the Lib Dems, you know you're going to take a hit.
Yeah.
You are going. This is going to be bad.
Yeah, I understand.
This is good, and especially if we're the new Democrats.
Yeah.
We're not going to get completely obliterated the way the Liberals will.
Yeah.
But we are still going to lose seats.
Yeah.
So okay, what do I lose? 18? Do I lose 12? Do I lose 8? Like how? Like I want to minimize my losses. So if I can do an election when it's still kind of a little chilly out,
Yeah.
if I get low voter turnout, that's to my advantage.
Yeah.
Right? But I don't want to immediately spring in January. Like, I don't want to do that because I got no money.
No.
So I need to kind of find that sweet spot where it's still going to give me a low turnout, but gives me a bit of time to mobilize my troops. So yeah, I'm thinking Marchish. So then that means I would expect you get a handover of government and say we have an election in March. We then do a handover of government, say what is it, 45, 60 days after the election?
I think, but I'm not sure. I can't remember.
So then we're probably talking
Sometime in May.
about a new government, sometime in May. So I would not anticipate a new budget until at least the autumn.
Yeah.
Say somewhere around like the beginning of the school year, say the beginning of the fourth fiscal quarter, somewhere around that time. And you might even only get an expedient budget and not get the real budget until April of 2026 with the start of the fiscal year.
Now you're just talking crazy.
And then, of course, this is all depending on whether or not the Prime Minister prorogues Parliament as soon as they get back.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway you slice it, I can't see a real budget because they will need a couple of months. Like, I do believe that the situation is a lot worse
Well, if he tries
than
to
we
prorogue
currently know.
Parliament, he loses.
Yeah, he does.
Well, he's lost anyway.
But he's lost anyway.
I know, but if he tries and prorogue it, then
Yeah.
the New Democrats just vote it down. That's all it takes.
No, he could prorogue
Yeah,
Parliament.
he can prorogue without a vote.
He doesn't need a vote.
Like Harper did. He was in a minority position. He prorogued Parliament.
Yeah, he doesn't need a vote. He can
Yeah,
do
he
it by
doesn't need a
himself.
vote. He has that executive authority, Queen and Council.
Yeah.
How long can he do that for?
I do not know off the top of my head, but
90 days
it
of the
is
throw, I
a
think?
finite amount, yeah.
I think it's 90 days.
I don't know if he will, though. I don't know if he will.
Yeah.
I think he'll still try and cut a deal with the NDP. I think he'll still cut some kind of desperate deal with them. Or he'll cut a deal with the Bloc. Because if he has the Bloc on board, he doesn't need the NDP.
He's already shut down.
Are
the
there
Bloc's
deals to be
approaches,
cut?
so.
Well,
That's the question. Are there deals to be cut? He may try to make a deal.
There are discussions happening right now. I guarantee it.
Gentlemen,
Alrighty.
I gotta go.
That's it.
Okay.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Now I got to come up with a title for this dog shit.